Welcome back. We've got an exciting section here for you on focus stacking. Now, again, because we're using a macro lens, our depth of field is actually pretty shallow, even though we're shooting at f16. Let's just take a look at our shot here. We're going to click on our image and zoom in. This is just at a half level zoom, but you can see this area, like the back of the cookies, are totally in focus, but the front of the cookie is not in focus, and going to the way back is out of focus as well. So we kind of have a thinner focus area that's right in the middle of the cookies. Now, let's say you're doing something like this and you want to make sure that everything is in focus. Well, this is something that you can actually do in post-production software. Super cool technique. It's very easy to do. All you have to do is make sure that you focus in the front, the middle, and the back of your object, depending obviously on the size of your object, and then combine those together in Photoshop, which we're going to show you how to do in the next chapter. You want to make sure that your lens is set to manual focus, and again, we're tethering, so I've got actually a really good preview of my focus here. So what I'm going to do is simply move my focus ring to be at the very beginning of when my product is in focus. There we go. That looks great. Now, I can't forget about my reflector. Normally, you could just simply, put this reflector on an arm, just like I've got my background set up, or have a friend do this, but we can do it all ourselves, no problem. So we're going to take a picture here. There we go. And again, we're in manual focus here. Adjust our focus ring slightly. Take one picture or two accidentally if you want to. Adjust our focus ring slightly again. All right, and then just a little bit more, just to make sure that everything is in focus. There we go. Now, I'm starting out at f16 with a lot in focus. I wouldn't recommend trying this at f2.8, especially when you're this close. Your focus area is just going to be so small. So this is a fantastic way. I can stitch all these together in Photoshop. It just takes a couple of minutes, and then our product is going to be completely in focus from front to back. Join us in our next section where we capture a few more variations and angles of our subject. Hello and welcome to Food Photography, Styling, and Retouching. My name is Aaron Nace, and I'm so excited to bring you this full-length tutorial that covers everything we need to know to photograph, style, and retouch food. I'm excited to bring you this tutorial for two different reasons. The first is during the tutorial, we actually outline the entire process of client interaction. This is a real person who needed photos for their fledgling business. So we go through everything from interviewing the client, figuring out what they want to say with their brand, and getting an idea of the types of images they want to make. Then we go through the entire photographic process with styling and lighting and making sure that all the food looks beautiful. And then we take things through post-production using Lightroom to choose our best images and Photoshop to do things like compositing and retouching. We even go over specific examples on how to capture images that are going to be perfect for your client's marketing needs. The second reason I'm excited to bring this tutorial is that we go through 3 different photo shoots all the way from building the set to post-production, starting off with tabletop photography on white, which is going to be perfect for e-commerce. We show you how to make sure that the background is 100% pure white. This means that wherever your client decides to put these images, whether it's in marketing, social media, or on their website, it's going to fit perfectly with text and other elements. In the next photo shoot, we focus on building a stylized food photo with other elements in the image that help tell the story of the food. In this case, we're photographing blueberry banana bread, and we bring in different elements like fresh blueberries, a glass of milk, to help give it a sense of space and scale and help the viewer imagine how that might fit into their life. And while photographing food and products on a pure white background is incredibly important, these stylized shots help to tell a little bit more of a story and are perfect for marketing and advertising. The last photo shoot in this series, we change things up a little bit. Here we're shooting with natural light, and we bring in people for some hero shots, like the first banner you might see on a business's webpage. In this case, we're shooting with a longer shutter speed, so our products look beautifully still, but we have a little bit of motion with the hands reaching for the cookies. And after getting the perfect shots in camera, we take these into post-production where we composite different photos together to add more variation. We also show you how to shoot and work with negative space in your images, allowing your client the ability to add their logo or any text or branding they'd like to those photos. So if you're just starting out or a seasoned professional, all you have to do is have an interest in food and taking beautiful photos. This tutorial is perfect for you. With everything from styling, lighting, photography, and retouching, it's the one-stop shop for better food photography. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the tutorial. Hey there and welcome. We've got an exciting chapter for you. We're going to be photographing cookies on a completely white background and going through the entire setup. So as you can see, there's literally nothing around me right now. We're going to start off with just building the stage itself. Now, we're kind of taking a hint from like larger, what's known as like sweeps or cyc walls. It's basically like a white piece of like paper, or it's a built into a building, just a very large curve that people are photographed against. Now, when you're photographing something smaller like cookies, you can just basically make your own out of poster board. So that's what we're going to be doing. So the smaller the object you photograph, the smaller your set has to be. So it's actually really nice. So let's go ahead and grab our light stand and our poster board. We're going to set up our little cyc right here on the table. Basically, we just have a light stand with a little arm attached to it. This is just a regular, it's called like a control arm. Basically, it's really good for putting lights on the end and creating like little boom situations. Now, our camera is located right over here, so we're going to be photographing the cookies in this direction. So we want to make sure we build our little cyc coming down here. Now, I've just got these standard clamps. They're super, super handy when it comes to like lighting, props, rigging for photography. Really, really helpful. So those are just going to sit right on top of there. We can adjust the height because this is just a regular light stand, as you can see. And then I just grab the poster board and we're going to set it right in. So here we are. We've got some poster board and just some white gaffer tape. So we're going to start off clipping this on, there we go, on this side here. Fantastic. And this is going to create our like background sweep. Now I can adjust the height of this. So, if I push this in, obviously it's just going to keep doing this over and over and over again. So what I want to do, and I'm going to pull this a little bit closer to my camera, we are using a macro lens here, so I can get nice and close, which is fantastic. So I just, using a piece of gaffer tape, white gaffer tape is nice just in case a little bit of it does get into the shot. It's white, so it's like not a big deal. We're just going to tape the end here just on the poster board, kind of bring it to the area that we need. There we go. To get a nice curvature, and then go ahead and lay that tape down. Perfect. All right. So the camera itself, this is a 90mm 2.8 macro. So the camera is really just going to be capturing like a pretty small area. So I don't really need anything larger than this, which cuts down on cost. It cuts down on the space. I'm also going to be bringing in lighting and things like that. So I want the setup to be as simple as possible. So for basically the cost of a poster board, we have a pure white background. Now, just a reminder here, this camera is going to stay on the tripod for the first part of this shoot, and we're shooting tethered. You can see there's an orange cable coming out of the camera here. Basically, because we're connected to the computer and I can look at live view, I'm not really going to be spending much time at the camera itself. I'm going to be using a remote trigger to capture the camera and fire the lights, as well as check my composition on the computer. So obviously not something you can do when you're out and about on location, but when you're in a studio setting, it really helps. You can check focus and just make sure that everything is coming out exactly how you want it. So our setup is good to go, nice and simple. Now we're ready to start bringing in the cookies. Hey there and welcome back. In this section, we're going to be bringing our subject into our scene, and in this case, our subject is cookies, which couldn't be any more fun. Now, we're shooting on white for a couple of reasons. One is for visual consistency on the website. We want to make sure that each of the products is photographed on white from a couple different angles, so when you're browsing the website, it's consistent from one to another. Now, my main goal with the shot is to show some variation within the cookies themselves. We are going to do a single cookie later on, but for now, I want to be able to show multiple cookies in a scene, and I want to be able to show the side and the front of the cookie in the same scene. So what we're going to do is create a short stack of cookies and then place one off to the side. So the first cookie is pretty simple. It's just, place it in your scene, and at this point, the live view comes in really, really handy. So basically, I'm going to go over to the camera now and make sure that my camera is actually focused on our cookie. There we go. We can bring this a little bit closer. There we are. And I'm going to pop this into manual focus for the time being. Notice I'm not really concerned about lighting at all at this stage. It's really all about composition. And again, because we're tethering, I have my tether capture right here on my display. There we go. Let's just make sure we center this cookie there. So I'm going to take a look at my screen here and start rotating the cookie around. And basically, I'm just looking for like the most visually interesting part of the cookie itself. So we're going to just do a short little stack of cookies here. There we are. And again, notice how I'm kind of looking at our screen to get a good idea. Now, these ginger snaps are beautiful because they have a lot of like cracks and variation in the cookies, and I really want to highlight that because I think it's one of the most unique parts of the cookies themselves. Now, if you're not shooting tethered, you can definitely, some cameras have a flip out display, which is super nice. You can also get external monitors and see those as well. So there are multiple ways to do this. Now, I'm also taking a look at the size. This cookie is a little bit larger, so I'm actually going to start with that on the base. So my stack was looking a little bit lopsided. Starting off with a larger cookie actually makes sense. Now, this cookie here actually broke earlier, which is not a problem because I actually want to put crumbs in the shot later. So what we're going to do is just hide it. You know, I mean, these cookies have like natural cracks in them anyway, right? So we're just going to kind of hide the fact that it's broken. No big deal. We'll just put that in there, and look at that. Can't even tell at all. And we're going to bring this cookie off to the side. There we go. So we've got a nice little short stack of ginger snaps. Things look really good. Now, we do have some crumbs in the shot. This is totally like a style choice. I actually think it gives a little bit more like life to the image itself. So what we're going to be doing is actually adding even more crumbs to this later on. So at this point, the cookies look great. Now, I'm definitely planning on doing a few different variations of this shot, and we're going to do that in a later section. But for now, the styling looks really good. Maybe I'll just adjust it a tiny bit. There we go. It's looking good. But again, my goal here is to be able to see, you know, at this point, I can see the thickness of the cookie. I can see the texture. I'll be able to see what the top looks like from this one leaning on the side. And I've got a short stack. So I've got a lot of information about my product. It looks great. And now it's time to bring in our lighting, which is really what's going to make the shot stand apart and look fantastic. We'll see you in the next section for that. Hey there, welcome back. This is the final section of our retouching. I'm so excited. We've created some great images so far. It's time to bring in a little bit of our client's branding. Very excited. So here we are. I think our image looks great. It's stylized. We've got some movement in it. The cookies look great. And we've got a ton of negative space here ready to pull in our client's logo. So let's go to File and down to Open, and included in your download, you've got our, there we go. We've got our sample images, Tubby's Taste logo. Now, the logo itself is relatively small. We're working on getting a higher resolution logo for you, but that's okay. We can still learn what we need to learn. So we're gonna hit Control-Command-T and just make that a little bit bigger. Normally, you wouldn't really want to do that because you lose some resolution, but that's, in this case, I feel like it's okay because we're just kind of learning how to do this. Now it's time to add in a little tagline. So let's hit F for full screen. We're gonna hit T for our type tool, and we're gonna type in vegan desserts for everyone. Fantastic. Now we wanna just open up, we're gonna go to Window and down to Character. So we can see a lot more. First of all, we wanna just make this black. There we go. I'm just using, we're going to use Helvetica Neue. There we go. Just a great standard font. Our line height here, let's just have this set to auto. Our font weight, we're just going to set this to thin. And then our paragraph, let's go ahead and left align that and just make this a little bit smaller. Vegan desserts for everyone. And our spacing, let's have this set to 0 as well. All right. Fantastic. Actually, you know what? I might just go paragraph and center align that. Okay, and we'll make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to make the logo a little bit bigger as well. And our text we're going to make just a little smaller. Okay, this is looking good. We'll go a little bit larger on that. I'm always kind of like playing trying to get the right balance between scale and size of letters and things like that. All right, let's hold Control or Command and click on the two of these, and then hit V for our move tool, and then we can center align both of them. Okay, vegan desserts for everyone, and we're just gonna bring this up a little bit. Okay, now we're gonna just go ahead and group those. Let's put it at the very top above our object removal. All right, and we'll just call this logo. I'm gonna hit Control or Command A to select everything, and then use my move tool, and then you can use your alignment tools to align it on the whole image. Like if I wanted to center align that, boop, you can do that. Bottom, top, right, middle, left. Okay, so we're gonna center align that, and then I'm just gonna use my move tool and hold Shift to do that. Actually, I'm gonna use my marquee tool to make a selection here all the way to that plate, and then hit V to center align this, boop, within that area. So now this logo is perfectly aligned on the center of our image and up and down as well. So vegan desserts for everyone. I think even that could just go a little bit smaller. So let's bring the character size down a little bit. There we go. All right. And I think that looks fantastic. So this obviously is a super simple example. I just wanted to give you an idea of like why we put negative space in there, because this could go on like an advertisement, super easy. It could go on the homepage of a website. So you still get the idea that you still see the product and everything, but all this negative space is left in the image intentionally for things like text, and it's just makes things a little bit more useful for your clients in general. So very simple example, but I think we get the idea, and I think it works without that stuff also. But I just wanted to show you why we included this image and our plan for what we're going to do with text. But honestly, I'm not going to be adding text and logos to this. This is just something I'll deliver to my client and say, this is an image that, put whatever you want there because you have the negative space to actually work with. Well, that's it for our tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning not only the retouching, but also all the photography that went into this. We put a lot of love into this tutorial. Thank you, Danielle of Tubby's Taste, for everything she did. And thank you for watching. Super, super fun. All right. Have a great day. I'll learn you later. Bye, everyone. Hello and welcome to our section on gear. Just in case you guys are wondering kind of like what the process is and what main gear we used for this photo shoot, we've got everything outlined for you. So we're starting off with our camera and a lens. Now this is a Sony mirrorless camera. This is the A7R4. It's a full frame mirrorless camera. And we're shooting with the Sony. This is an f2.8 90mm macro lens. It's a manual focus and an automatic focus lens. Now, the reason why we're shooting with a macro lens in this case is so we can get relatively close to our subject and still be able to focus. If you're photographing with a standard lens, oftentimes, especially lenses that are a little bit longer, like a 70 to 200, for instance, they have a minimum focal distance, sometimes of 2 or even 3 feet. So you can't actually focus when you're very close. So when photographing small objects like food, products in general, a macro lens is a great choice. And they tend to be sharp because in this case, this is a prime lens. It's just 90 millimeters. It doesn't zoom in or out. And pretty much every time you have a prime lens, it's going to be a little bit sharper. So this was our lens of choice for this shoot. And generally when I'm shooting food or product, this is the lens that I go to. Now moving on to our lighting, you might see this little trigger right up here on the top of the camera. This doesn't come with the camera. This is, it's a CyberSync. Basically, what it is a radio transmitter that communicates from the camera to our flash. So here are the flashes we use. We use these Paul Buff Einstein flashes, and you can see we have basically the same radio transmitter here on top of the flash. So when you take a picture, a signal gets sent from the camera to the flash, and flash is basically during the exposure of the camera. It's just a short burst of light. You get a lot of light and you can control it. So really it doesn't, in my experience, really matter what brand of flash you use. This is like kind of what I would consider like a mid-range in terms of quality and in terms of cost. Again, if you're looking at getting like pro photos or something like that, they're also great lights. They can just be a little bit more expensive. The more expensive lights, you pay for a little bit more of like robustness. They might just hold up a little bit better throughout time. Maybe custom or sport's gonna be, things like that. But, I've been shooting with these lights for over 10 years and every time I have to send something back, they're just fantastic. So I'm a really big fan of these lights. Basically, with any of these strobes, you're just going to be able to increase the amount of light and decrease the amount of light. It doesn't matter what brand you're using. Now we've got one little hardware hack for you, and that's actually this guy. It's a USB presenter. And what these are used for are like on-stage presentations. Like if you're giving like a slideshow, you can hit, the forward or back button to go through your slideshow. But the cool thing is the forward and back actually correlates with buttons on your keyboard. But I use a piece of software for the Mac called Carabiner. It allows you to remap these keys for any computer program. And we're using the capture program remote for our Sony. So if you press the number 1 on your keyboard, it's going to take a picture. Now, using the program called Carabiner, that's with a K, I'm able to reprogram these buttons to basically be the number 1 on the keyboard. And then this becomes my remote trigger in the studio, which is incredibly cool, and it doesn't really cost much at all. So that's my little hack for you. This is the case with the Sony cameras. If you are using like Capture One or Lightroom, there are keyboard shortcuts to remote capture those as well. And you can still use one of these and remap the keys with that program called Carabiner. So it's just super helpful in so many different ways, but especially like if your camera's up here looking down, you don't want to like go up there and press the button. It's so much nicer to just hit a button right here and be able to take pictures. The other gear we're using in this tutorial are basically lighting modifiers for our Einstein. So we have a few beauty dishes, we have soft boxes, but basically all they do is shape the light that's coming out of these things. So basically the rule of thumb when using lighting modifiers is the larger your modifier goes, the softer your light is going to appear. The smaller it is, the harder your light is going to appear. And if you add diffusion fabric in front of it, that's going to make the light even softer. So there's no real right or wrong way to do lighting. It's just what you want for every individual scene. We do use a couple reflectors throughout this tutorial. We use like white foam core as a V-flat to do large scale reflection. We have this small reflective foil paper. I just bought that at an arts and crafts store. So all you're doing is, light's coming in from this direction, you reflect it back onto your subject. That's the whole idea. So a white t-shirt could work. It's really, light is gonna bounce off of everything. Black, it's gonna absorb a little bit more. So if you want more shadow in the area, you can have a black reflector. If you want more highlight, use a white reflector. So that's the whole idea there. And that's pretty much it for the gear. So if you want to create shots just like we did, you can use our gear or you can use any variation of. Really, I mean, you can totally get very similar shots to these using a completely different gear setup. You can use any brand of light, any brand of camera, and really any lens you want. This is just what we chose to shoot with for this project. And that's all there is to the gear we're using. Thank you so much. Let's get into the tutorial. Hey there, welcome back. We got an awesome section on focus stacking. It's just a really helpful technique whenever you want to make sure that an entire object is in focus. So we're going to start this off in Lightroom and then go into Photoshop. This is actually really easy to do provided you have your setup correct, and we showed you how to do that in the last chapter. Basically, deal is you want to make sure that your camera is set to manual mode so your settings aren't changing from one image to another. And you want to make sure that your focus is set to manual focus. So you can turn the focus ring on your camera ever so slightly. It's going to move the focus throughout your picture. Then you can combine those together. My other suggestion is just not to shoot with a super shallow depth of field like 2.0 or 2.8. The reason is the amount of photos you would have to take from front to back, even of cookies like this, would be so many more. So we're shooting here. Let's just go back into Lightroom here. Make sure we hit I to look at our information. There we go. So you can see we're shooting at f16. So my depth of field is going to be much wider than it would be at something like 2.8. So f16 here, I've captured an image of the front of the cookie, the middle of the cookie, and the back of the cookie. It's time to combine them together. So jumping here into Lightroom, jumping right in, we're going to hold Control or Command and click on the 3 images that we've already decided. We're going to right click on these images. I'm going to go to Edit In and then Open as Layers in Photoshop. Super nice. We can just open these each up as their own individual layers. So computer's going to do a little bit of magic. We'll get back to you once they're in Photoshop. So our images are here in Photoshop, all in layers, which is super nice. Let's hit F for full screen. And now, super duper easy. All we have to do is shift click on all 3 of our layers. I'm going to go to Edit and we're going to go to Auto Blend Layers. And here you have the option Panorama, but in this case, we're just going to choose Stack Images. So we're going to hit OK. Again, just takes a second, basically figures out everything automatically, and we'll join you in a second when it's done. All right, there we have it. It finished. And to be honest, that kind of did take a long time, but they're huge pictures, so kind of makes sense. Let's see what we've got here. Zooming into our image, let's see what actually matters here. The front of our image is in focus, the middle, and the back of our image. And we didn't really have to do any work, which is fantastic. Now, here's what's going on. We'll just turn these layers off, excuse me, and we can see what it actually takes of each of the images. So you can see this image, the only thing that it's actually taking is the back part of the cookie. Here we go. You can see it's building it from the front, and here a little bit more, which is super, super cool. Now, in this case, it did return just a couple little errors. For instance, if I zoom into this area, we can see just a little bit funky right here. So definitely like is more in focus for sure, but this is kind of like not really acceptable. So what we're gonna do is create a new layer and hit S for the clone stamp tool. And I'm just gonna clone stamp right over here. Okay, we're gonna clone stamp this in over this area. There we go. Boop, boop, beep, 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 beep. And then hit Control or Command T. We're just going to rotate this around. Okay. Rotate that around. That looks pretty good. Now on the same layer, I'm just going to hit B for the brush tool and then sample this lighter color because it kind of did like a little bit of a blending effect and tried to blend some of my cookie with the background and does not
you know, in this case, it's like, no, don't do that because I'm trying to make a pure white background here. There we go. Clean that up here. Let's create a layer mask on there. Okay. Let's paint black on our layer mask right over there till we get a realistic result. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, we do have a couple other areas that we need to address here. So just like clone stamp basically everything together. So we're just going to clone stamp this in. S for the clone stamp tool. Okay, no big deal. No, nothing's perfect in this world. All right, there we go. And we're going to clone stamp this right over top of this little crevasse area too. Honestly, these details are so small that, like, even if you didn't do that, you probably wouldn't even notice that. But we want to make sure we do take care of that. Okay. Now, our next section is on making backgrounds pure white. So we're going to pull this image into our next section. Let's just save this out now. So Shift Command S. All right. And we're going to save this, and we're just going to save this in the same folder. I'm going to just call this stacked. There we go. It's going to go into my PSD folder. Now we're going to come back to this in the next section as well as some other images. I just want to do all the on white stuff at the same time. So it's saved. We can go back into Lightroom now, and you can see it automatically shows up here in Lightroom, which is super cool. So here we can see this is now retouching on white for stacked. This is a PSD. It's going to take just a second for it to render out. I promise it looks better than that. But now what I want to do, look at that, focus stacked, beautiful. Now what I want to do on this one is hit the number 5 to give it a 5-star rating, and the number 6 to let us know that it's part of our final collection. So you can see these ones here, I'm just going to move that to the left a little bit. These ones were the ones we stacked. Here's the final. And in our next section, we're going to be bringing this into Photoshop again, making sure our background is pure white, and we're going to do pure white a couple of these other ones. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next section. Bye, everyone. Hello and welcome to our stylized shoot. So much fun. Here we're adding some additional elements like blueberries that are going to go into our blueberry banana bread. We're going to add some milk into the shot, do some things with our background as well, and just kind of like add a little bit of life to these photos. So it's very important to get your on white images, pure white background, so you get an idea of what just the product looks like. But having these stylized shots helps you to imagine the product in a little bit more of an environment, and just kind of makes it feel like, in this case, because it's banana bread, it makes it feel like it's at a home, and kind of like makes it feel a little bit more comfortable and like something you'd actually want to eat in this case, because it's a food product. So we're going to start off with setting up our scene. Now, because we want everything on light backgrounds, we're going to start off with basically we have a stone surface that we're going to use as our base. And then we're going to use a stone surface as our background too. So we're kind of mimicking like a kitchen setting here with, like maybe marble, backsplashes and things like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start pulling these in. I've actually got them right back here. I'm going to get my gloves on because they are legitimately heavy, and the edges on at least one of them are kind of sharp. So you can see this is like legitimately heavy, but it's beautiful. And there we go. And I love, love, love
shooting with this. Oh, boy. I'm actually not sure what this is, but it's stone, it's natural stone, and it creates some beautiful, beautiful photographs. Actually, it does have one edge that has like a protective barrier around it, so I'm going to flip this around. Alrighty. You can watch me struggle with this, because it's legitimately heavy. All right, but it's beautiful. You can see, I don't know if you can see how it goes, how the light goes through it, but all right, there we are. Okay, fantastic. Now, because our scene is relatively small, we can get away with a surface this big. Honestly, if it was any bigger, I don't think I could lift it. Okay, now we're gonna be shooting angled here, so I don't want just this. I need something in the back. And in chapter 1, we just used a white sweep, which is totally great and very inexpensive, very easy to find. In this case, we want to give our scene a little bit of a backing. And I want to just move this a little bit closer too. We're trying to pick this up so it doesn't scratch the table. Okay, fantastic. So we have a back. Now this is actually a marble tile. This is something that, you know, if you wanted to tile your bathroom, you could buy one of these. It's real marble. They do make stuff like this that is manufactured. I'm pretty sure this is real marble anyway. And I picked this up at like a bath and tile store also. So this is gonna make up the backsplash of our image. So something just like that. Now we have a real scene, and because we're photographing into it, that's really all we need in the scene itself. Now, this piece will stand on its own. However, I don't trust this because knowing me, I'm probably going to knock this and move it around and possibly have it fall and maybe crush something or break. So I'm going to set this down for just a second while I grab a light stand with a control arm, and we're going to go ahead and clamp this in place to make sure that it stays. So here we have our trusty light stand with a little arm attached to it, which is just the perfect way to, you know, hold reflectors, things like that. In this case, a background. So let's just go ahead and prop this back up here. Okay, push it right into place. Such a beautiful piece of stone. I'm just like a sucker for stone, anything natural. I'm just like, you got me. Please, more of that in my life. All right, we're gonna take, and these are just standard clamps here. We're gonna go ahead and take these clamps off. I'm gonna lower this. There we go. And the clamps go over the bar and then onto the piece of stone. Over the bar, onto the piece of stone. This way, I'm not gonna be able to knock it over. So our setup looks really nice. Now, let's go ahead and back our camera up just a little bit. Again, we're shooting with our 90mm 2.8 macro lens here, okay? And we'll go ahead and put this right here. And here we can see, I'm gonna just pop this into manual focus and go ahead and focus on our background. So you'll be able to see here in the screen that it's just a nice clean environment here. I'm probably gonna raise our camera up just a little bit so we can photograph a little bit more of this. It's okay if the camera comes back there, but it really does look like a clean kitchen setting. We've got 2 pieces of natural stone, really, really beautiful materials. Personally, I'm a sucker for nice materials, but I also think that they really help to elevate any type of photography, prop photography, food photography. As far as our setup goes, the set itself, this is pretty much it. We're good to go. Next, we're gonna be bringing in props and styling, and again, kind of like going with the whole kitchen theme here. So we're gonna be bringing in napkins and plates and all types of different things that are gonna make you feel like you're at home in a cozy but stone-equipped kitchen. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you in the next section. Hey there and welcome back. It's time to put our finishing steps on this image. It's already looking so good. I mean, there's not a crazy amount of stuff that we need to do, but here we're going to be doing a little bit of color work, just kind of bringing out some of the natural colors. We're going to do some dodging and burning, and we're going to go ahead and add sharpening. So let's go ahead and start off, take a look at our before and after here, because that was like really the big thing in our last section. So made a big difference in the image as a whole. If you do nothing else, make sure just to do a little bit of cleanup. Now, in this case, what we're going to do is grab our hue saturation adjustment layer, and I'm going to go ahead and target these blues. So we're going to change our master, from our master color, we're going to go down to blues. I'm going to use my eyedropper and go ahead and click on the blues. So we're targeting just those colors, and we're going to bring our saturation up just a bit. You don't want to go too high. It's going to start to look fake, but just up a little bit is going to really like kind of enhance that blueberry feeling. And it's going to bring up some of the blues here as well. I think we go a tiny bit higher. There we go. Brings up some of the blues in the napkin area as well. So that looks fantastic. Now, the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of dodging and burning. Let's go ahead and grab a curves adjustment layer. We're going to make this a bit brighter. We'll hit Control Command I for invert. That's just going to make our layer mask black. And now I can paint white on my layer mask, just like over the tops of these areas. There we go. Same thing that we did with our lighting. Really, I'm just trying to enhance the difference between each individual piece of bread here. And I did that through my lighting, and now it's time to like continue the same idea in post-production. So it's a good idea to have goals whenever you're getting into your post-production. And here my goals are the exact same goals that I had when photographing this, this banana bread. All right, we'll lighten up these little blueberries just a little bit as well. And I'm going to bring a tiny bit of light right up there into the top of the milk. So let's just turn this off and on, and you can see it just adds a little bit more dimension. Now, we're going to look at burning just a little bit. So let's grab a curves adjustment layer. We're going to make this a teeny bit darker. And I'm going to hit Control Command I to invert that layer mask. And then we're just going to paint it on a tiny bit right over here, just to darken up this front side of the bread. And that's just going to help give us a little bit more three-dimensionality. Fantastic. And the bottom there a little bit too. That might be a little bit dark. Let's just make it a little more subtle. Good deal. So let's just turn those off. So there's the before and the after. You can see the bread just looks a lot more three-dimensional. Like it's got a little bit more light on there too. And when it comes to dodging and burning in general, so dodging makes things brighter, burning makes things darker. You don't have to do both. You can only dodge or only burn as well. This is totally a matter of choice. So I think we're looking great. The last thing we want to do is bring in some sharpening. Super easy to do because we have an action that we've used in our previous retouching section. So let's go to Window and down to Actions. There we go. Now, if you haven't loaded the Fleur and Sharpen action, easy to do. Go ahead and click on your menu item, go down to Load Actions, and then in your download, here we go, you're going to see Photoshop Actions, fleurandsharpen.atn. Just click on Open. Now, in this case, I've already got it here, so we're going to go down to, I'm going to go to Sharpen +3 and hit Play. And what I'm looking for is to bring out the texture of this banana bread, but I don't really want to sharpen other areas of the photo. This is something that I really just want to like bring the attention right here. So with these sharpen actions, the nice thing is you can create layer masks to make them only visible in certain areas. So fantastic here. Let's go ahead and close that dialog out, okay? And just turn this off and on. You can see what a nice job that does, especially right here in the foreground. Now, if you want more or less sharpening, just double click right here where it says high pass, and here's where you can actually change the sharpening radius, okay? So more sharpening, you can see it kind of looks weird if you add too much, but here we go, see a little bit more subtle. So I'm gonna just get this nice and fine-tuned, something right about there. I'm gonna just put 9 pixels in. That looks pretty good. All right, so turning this off and on, we can see that looks really nice. And again, the banana bread is the focus point here. So I don't really want other things to be sharpened necessarily. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option, click on our layer mask, which just makes a black layer mask, makes it invisible.
Okay, and now we're just going to paint white on our layer mask right over top of the areas we want to sharpen. Okay, and I'm going to let it kind of like naturally get out of focus there a little bit. Fantastic. And this will also just like enhance little bits of highlights as well, which will make food look more like fresh and moist. So turning this off and on, I think it did really nice on the blueberries. Actually, I think here in the bread areas, it did the opposite. I think it made it look a little bit less moist. There we go. So we're just going to lessen the effect by painting black on our layer mask there. There we go. That's what's so nice about these sharpen actions is you can choose where you want them to be visible. There we go. That's fantastic. And we're done. This is not something that we have to do a crazy edit to. I think this looks really, really nice. Let's go ahead and group all of these together. There we go. We'll hit F for full screen and check it out. Here's our before and the after. A nice, simple edit. You can see just a couple of minutes makes a big difference. And when you spend a lot of energy getting your styling right and your lighting right, then when it comes to retouching, there's just not a crazy amount of stuff that you need to do, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye, everyone. Ooh, it is so hot in here. It's like a sweltering jungle.
Hey there, welcome back. It's time to get into the lighting of our scene. Now, this is going to be fantastic. Before we get in and start moving things around, let's talk a little bit about how we can use natural light and things like reflectors to really make sure our scene looks beautiful. Now, we have a fairly bright open studio that we're working in, but what we want to make sure is that the light that's coming into our scene, we want to make sure it's being reflected back onto our products as well, because we don't want our shadows to be too dark. That's a big deal here. So we're going to kind of start off large and then move small. But before we do, let's go ahead and take a picture. Now, I have a little remote here that I've actually rigged up to take pictures, which is fantastic. So that's a pretty good place to start with. Now, the first thing I want to do is bring in very large reflectors right behind our products. So these are called V-flats. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these. It's just right here. This is a 4-foot by 8-foot piece of foam core that we simply tape together. So it's 2 pieces. The nice thing about that is it stands on its own. So this large white surface is going to reflect a lot of natural light back onto my scene. So let's go ahead and take another picture here and then see how that looks in comparison. So as we can see, we brought in just a little bit more light into our scene in general. So the next thing I want to do is bring a silver reflector in, and that's going to be even closer to my product. There we go. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and bring this in. And not only is this silver reflector going to add a little bit of light, but it's also going to give us a little bit of like a shimmer effect. And you can kind of see it right there. So let's go ahead and take another picture and see how that looks. So here we can see this is our before and our after here with that silver reflector. So you can see we're getting a lot of really nice color in. And actually it is nice but it's a little bit on the cool side. I can see here, especially when I look at these cookies here, let's just zoom in here. We don't need to be that far zoomed in. Here's the before and the after. It's bringing in some blue light, which makes sense because I have daylight coming in. So we're going to bring up our gold reflector, simply just replace this, and that's going to warm up our image just a little bit more while still providing that reflection. And again, this is just, I bought this at a craft store. It's very inexpensive paper. It's just, paper on one side and reflection on the other. So we're just going to simply put it right over top of the silver. There we are. Fantastic. And this is just going to warm up our bake. I can already see it like with my eyes. So let's go ahead and take another picture here. Great. So here's the silver reflector. You can see it has a little bit of a cooler tint to it. And here's with our gold, it's a little bit warmer. Now, this reflector is obviously outside of our shot, and it is going to be affecting like these cookies especially, but other areas not as much. So I've got smaller reflectors here that we can bring in as well. We'll bring this in with the chocolate chips. There we go. And just make sure it's not actually in the shot. I can see the reflection, which is nice. Now, the camera's struggling just a tiny bit, actually, to take a picture. It has been auto-focusing on these elements, but as soon as I bring my hands in up here, it's getting a little bit tricky because I'm closer to the camera. So at this point, what I actually want to do is switch into manual focus, and then I can just leave it there for the rest of the photo shoot. So in this case, because I'm using this Sony 90mm macro, the focus ring, I just have to push this little dial here. There we go, and we're in manual focus. Now, I can actually zoom in here. There we go, super zoomed into my image. There we go, look at that cookie and all of its beautiful cookie nature. Now you can see my camera is moving a little bit. Makes sense because I just touched it. We would definitely want to wait to stop any movement before taking pictures. But for now, let's go ahead and focus. I'm also shooting at f16, so there's a lot in focus. If I was shooting at f2.8, obviously way more critical here. But with this 5x zoom, I'm able to see right when my cookies are in focus. Okay, that looks fantastic. Now, we're going to give it a second to stop moving up there, and then I'm going to take another picture and check it in Lightroom. That way I can just be sure that my focus actually is good before moving forward. So we just took another picture. We're going to go ahead and zoom in to 100% here and make sure everything's in focus, and it looks really, really good. Now, I just want to show you a little bit of what happens, for instance, when I just step on this floor. So I'm just going to like jump a little bit, and you can see that camera shake. Like, that's quite a bit of shake. And if I jump and take a picture while I jump, this is motion blur that we're seeing in our shot. So no motion blur and motion blur. So not only are we going to capture some movement with the hands, but any type of movement with the camera is going to be exaggerated. And when we've got the camera on a boom like this, that's going to be exaggerated as well. Okay, now getting back into our lighting, we're actually almost done. A couple of things. Now that we're shooting manual focus, I'm not going to have any issues with my hand coming in here and having it change the focus. So if I bring this little reflector in to reflect some light back on my chocolate chip cookies, all right, and we go ahead and take a picture, there we go. Now I can simply composite these together. I can get just the chocolate chips from one shot and the rest of the image from another. Now, I do have this gold, which is giving my image just a little bit of a tint. So if I want to, I can just use the white side of this as well, which is going to work as a reflection, as a reflector. It's going to be a little bit less bright. There we go. But it's still going to give me the results that I want. There we go. So I'm going to make sure that I put this on every single one of my main elements here. There we go. Just making sure it's not actually covering up those elements there. And then what I can do is composite these together in the final photo. So on the left, we have no reflector at all. And on the right, we have the gold reflector. And you can see a lot more information in the product itself. It just looks like it has more light, well, because it does. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what it looks like with the white reflector. We're going to hit C for comparison, and we can see a nice difference there as well. So just a simple reflector reflects a little bit of the natural light and just makes the shot look a little bit more complete. So at this point, we're almost done with our setup here. What we're going to do is make sure to bring our gray card in to our scene. Just pop it right down there. We'll take a photograph, and that way we can just make sure we have the perfect white balance for every image in this scene. We're looking great. It's time to bring in our subjects and really bring this photo to life. Hey there, welcome back. It's time to put together our last image. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial so far. If you haven't already done so, please leave a review of that. You can do that right here on Florin.com. Really helps us out grow this fantastic community of photographers and artists. Well, we're going to be combining a couple images together. We've got some details to get rid of in the background, just like tables and things like that. We're going to be brightening our exposure, and in our next section, we're going to be bringing in some logos as well, because this is the image where we wanted a lot more negative space, so we could have things like logos in those pictures. So let's go ahead and pull these in. Now, we're going to just choose our images here in Lightroom, Control or Command click on them. We've already figured out which images we're going to use, edit in, and I'm going to go to open the layers in Photoshop. So basically, you know, like all the culling and everything like that is done. Now we just need to do a quick combining of our images. So here we go. We're going to hit F for full screen, and really we have the option of what we want to choose, but we wanted this hand to be the main hand in this image. And I'm holding a reflector right over here. So what we're going to do is just bring this Models in Food 13 up to the top. I'm going to hold Alt or Option, click on my layer mask to just make a black layer mask on there. And then we're just going to paint white on the layer mask right here and erase this away. This is by far the easiest way to do something like this. Just take a picture of, you know, the reflector in and a picture of the reflector out, and you're good to go. Look at that. Couldn't be easier to composite. So next we're going to just fill this area in down here. So J for our spot healing brush tool. We're just going to do this segment by segment. Super easy to do. There we go. We've got plenty of information up here for this tool to pull from, so we shouldn't have any errors or any difficulty. If it doesn't do exactly what you want, that's a good time to bring in like the clone stamp tool, for instance. But I don't think we're really going to need it in this case. All right, there we go. That looks pretty good. We'll see what it does right here. If it doesn't do it exactly like we want, nope. We're going to create a new layer, hit S for the clone stamp tool, and just clone stamp this in there. There we go. Fantastic. And then we've got a little bit over here. I'm just going to clone stamp this in as well. So S for the clone stamp tool, right in there. Fantastic, and just go right up to the edge there. Okay, so just a simple clone stamp, and you can see we have all the information we need up there at the top. So all that looks really good. Now, it still is a little bit cooler on this side and a little bit warmer on the left side. That's something we corrected in Lightroom previously, but we can do this here in Photoshop too. So what we're gonna do is grab an adjustment layer. I'm gonna go to color balance, okay? And my midtones, I'm just gonna pull a little bit towards blue. There we go.
I'm going to invert my layer mask by hitting Controller Command I, and then just choosing to paint white with my brush tool on the layer mask. So it's just going to make that area visible there. Okay, so what this is basically doing is just cooling that area down a little bit, and my goal is to match the left side and the right side of this image. All right, so let's just make that visible and invisible. Looking pretty good. I think let's go to cyan just a tiny bit too. There we go. A little bit of magenta and then a little bit more blue. All right, pretty cool. I feel like that's a nice match from one to another. Maybe just a little bit less of an effect there. Okay, now just like we did before, I just want to lighten this up in general. So we're going to grab a curves adjustment layer. There we go, and drag this up. Double click here. I don't want this to be visible in the darks because we're going to protect areas like our cookies and chocolate chips. Okay, there we go. But in general, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe we won't go as far with that. Perfect. And then I do want to just brighten up this whole scene a little bit in general. Okay, so that looks good even on our products. We'll grab another curves adjustment layer. Just make this brighter. There we go. And perfect. Go ahead and brighten this up because we want it like not white, but kind of close to white because of, what we're going to be using this for. Adding like adding text and graphics to it, so it makes sense. Whoops. Right click down here. I'm going to go back to white. I did that on accident. All right, let's just close that and see how this looks as a whole. I think it looks pretty dang nice. I'm just going to lower my saturation. So we're going to bring hue saturation, just lower the saturation, not on the cookies. So let's make sure we paint black on our layer mask over top of the cookies and our subject's hand and everything like that. But the rest of it, it's supposed to be just like white, right? So lowering the saturation, that's just going to help because we had a little bit of a color shift before. So there we go. It's a nice simple change. We're going to grab another curves adjustment layer. Okay, make it a little bit brighter. Invert that layer mask and then just paint it bright. Just a couple of these areas that are a little bit darker. So we're definitely going for more like a graphic style image here. All right. I'm going to add a little bit more contrast. So we're going to go to a brightness/contrast adjustment layer. There we go. Add a little bit more contrast to like the cookies, and the hand, and the chocolate chips. Cool. So you can see, there we go. I think that looks nice, actually. Maybe a tiny bit less. Fantastic. And I do want to have one more option without these chocolate chips in there. So we're going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to spot heal the whole thing out. It's surrounded by, just this nice background, so shouldn't be an issue to just spot heal this whole thing out. And I can just turn this layer off and on to decide, whether we want to actually use it or not. So on a new layer, spot healing it, you can see it just takes a second. It's kind of thinking. Did a pretty decent job. I'm going to hit S for the clone stamp tool and patch this in. So S for clone stamp, kind of patch this in a little bit because the edges were a little bit detectable. You could kind of see that something might have been there. Obviously, you don't want that. But that's the nice thing about shooting on such a clean backdrop like this is, you can remove entire elements like that and make it pretty dang seamless. All right. Yeah, look at that. Couldn't even tell that there was something there before. Okay, well, there we go. And again, that's just a choice we have. So let's go ahead and just turn all these off here, see what we started with. So let's go ahead, we'll group those together. Just call this background. Composite. There we go. And then we did some, extension. All right, this is all color and light. Okay, and then this is object removal here. Again, we can just turn this off and on. It doesn't really matter kind of either way. I think it is a little bit cleaner with that out of there though, so I'm gonna just leave it like this. So there we go. I mean, image looks great. We're ready for our like text and our logo. So in our next section, we're gonna bring that in, show you a couple of options there, and then we're gonna be done with our retouching. So much fun. We'll see you in the next section. Bye everyone. Vegan desserts for everyone. Wait, these are vegan? Hey there and welcome back. In this section, we're gonna be doing a little bit of transforming and shaping the cookies. Obviously, we do our best on set to make sure everything looks perfect, but you can also clean things up in post-production. So we're gonna be focusing mostly on the liquify tool, and we're gonna be doing our short stack cookies on white. So I'm here back in Lightroom, and we've got a retouching 4 stacked on white. Now, if I want to edit this again, it's super easy to do. I just right click, go to edit in, and just say edit in Photoshop CC 2019, okay? And it just pops it right back into Photoshop. So obviously I can totally go through my Finder and find where it is, but I can go back and forth from Lightroom to Photoshop. It's super easy. Now here it's gonna ask me if I want to edit a copy of it, a copy with Lightroom adjustments. I'm just gonna hit edit original. So we're gonna click on edit, and you're gonna see it's just gonna pop it up. It'll take 2 seconds and open it up in Photoshop. So here we have our image looking great. Everything is perfectly on white, and I know that because I have my check layer here that tells me that. Fantastic. So at this point, I just want to do a little bit of shaping. So what we're going to do is create a new layer above everything. I need to do, basically I need to get all of my image on this layer. So we're going to go to image and down to apply image. There we go. And here in our settings, my layer, I want to be merged, and my blending, I want to be normal. So it's going to take everything that you see, it's going to merge it and put it on a new layer, but it keeps all those layers intact too. So this isn't a destructive technique, okay? And it's just going to do that in a normal blending mode. So we'll hit OK. Okay. Now, again, this is super nice because, check this out. I can just, like, if I hit Control-Command-T, I can like shrink this layer down, okay? So you can see, let's just hit escape here, but everything underneath it is still intact. This layer just happens to contain everything that we see, right? Like I'll just put my background to light gray. So moving this around, you can see it's just everything from my layer. And this is the perfect time to do your liquify. But before we use our liquify tool, I wanna make sure I turn this into a smart object. That way I can undo my liquify at any time. So we right click here and go to convert to smart object. Boop, bop, beep, takes just a second. And anytime I use a filter in Photoshop, I recommend using smart objects. It just allows you to undo them. Without smart objects, you couldn't undo them. So super important. So we have a smart object now. You can see there's a little smart object icon. We're gonna go to filter and down to liquify. And we're just gonna liquify the entire layer. Now, here in our liquify dialog, really the only tool that I wind up using 98% of the time is this forward warp tool. It just allows you to push and pull things, kind of move them around. So with the forward warp tool, my goal here is to kind of straighten up our stack a little bit and kind of round out these cookies just a little bit too. So you want to make your size a little bit larger than like what you think you need, okay? There we go. So I'm going to just pull this whole stack to the right. So we'll just click and drag to the right just a little bit. There we go. So you can see I have a really nice large brush here, and that's super important because if I have a small brush, let me just use the open and close brackets. So I have a small brush, you can see I'm just affecting that little area. Let's just undo that. I'll bring my pressure up to exaggerate that, okay? It's just gonna affect that little area, right? That's not gonna look realistic. But if you have a super, super large brush, you can kind of get in here and just click and drag. See, I'm able to move a larger area at a time. There we go. So your effects are going to look more realistic. We're going to bring our pressure down because you don't want it to be too high. I find that making subtle changes actually works out a little bit better. All right, so we're just kind of rounding the shape of these cookies out a little bit here. Now, I'm not trying to make these 100% perfect, to be honest, because they're, they're cookies, and they're not like a manufactured product, right? Like there are size and shape variations to these. We're gonna pull this one up there. I just want to make sure that they look, that the stack looks like sturdy and nicely put together. Okay, now that to me actually looks really good. Okay, subtle changes, but I think it looks really good. So we're gonna click on this little reconstruct here. And this allows us to see the before and after. So we can click this slider and see there's a before and the after. So here's our before and the after. Again, you can see the after just looks like a little bit more kind of put together, a little bit better of a stack. So let's hit cancel there because I actually think this looks good, and we'll hit OK. All right, now this takes just a second. Okay, the fact that we make this a smart object means I can turn this liquefy off and on at any time. See, there you go, turn it off and then back on. I can even double click right here in my liquefy, okay? And then I could go to reconstruct this if I wanted to, okay? Like if I wanted to get part of the way back, I could do that. All right, so it's just a super nice, nice way to be able to do this. So again, everything's on white. We can still turn our check layer on to see, yep, everything looks good. But now we have a little bit more, just a little bit better shape of the cookies. Now, at this point, you could totally choose to like clean up some of these areas. Like, I'll show you how to do it. I'm actually very happy with the shape of the cookies because I kind of like that they're not perfect because they're cookies, right? But if you wanted to like bridge this gap, you could create a new layer and then hit S for the clone stamp tool. Okay, and I'm just going to clone stamp a little bit on a new layer. There we go. And then use my move tool. So V for the move tool. We're going to choose our layer blend mode is going to be darken. Okay, because I don't want, you can see how if it was set to normal, that white from the outside is there, right? Like let's put it right there. But if you put it to darkened, boop, check it out. Now it just makes cookie dark, like cookie dark. It just makes cookie. So you could hit Control-Command-T, right click, and then right click again and go to warp, and then kind of just warp this down into place until it fits in the cookie area that you want it to. And then hit enter. Okay. And then of course we can just click on our layer mask, invert our layer mask by hitting Control-Command-I, and then just kind of mask this in. So see how easy that was? Boom. So filling in extra cookie areas if we want. I'll leave that one there. Why not? As a little example of, hey, look what you can do. But super, super quick and easy. And as long as you chose a large enough brush with your liquefy, you shouldn't see any stretched pixels. It's when you use small brushes that you'll see like stretched pixels with the liquefy effect, and it doesn't look realistic, but you can see I'm zooming in here. Nothing looks stretched. Nothing looks like warped or weird. Looks pretty dang good. We do have a couple little issues here. Let me just create a new layer that resulted from our focus stacking. So I'm just going to clone stamp over those. Super easy. Just ask for the clone stamp tool and, kind of get in there and take care of these little things. All right. Focus stacking is a super cool effect. Obviously not 100% perfect, but it definitely does help you get, there we go. Let's just bring that in there too. All right, I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a new edge there. Ha 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 ha. It definitely does get you the ability to make sure that everything is in focus.
Well, there we go. That's it for transforming and shaping our cookies. In our next section, we're going to be doing in some finishing steps. We're going to do some dodging and burning, filling in a little bit of our shadows, and applying sharpening to the cookies. Thanks so much. We'll see you then. Bye, everyone. A beautiful bunch of ripe bananas. Highly deadly black tarantulas. Hey there and welcome back. It's time to bring our image into Photoshop. We're going to be doing a bunch of cleanup and just general improvements on our food shots. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to bring this stylized photo 2.dng into Photoshop. We're just going to right click. I'm going to go to Edit In and down to Edit in Photoshop CC 2019. All right, takes just a second. We'll pick up when it's in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop. We're going to start this off with a little bit of an outline of what we're going to cover in this section. So this is mostly about cleanup. Honestly, the photograph looks pretty good. Like there's not a whole lot of crazy stuff that we need to do, but we definitely want to clean some details up. So down here, taking a look at like the plate area, you know, these type of details we want to clean up. We got a little bit of a crumb there. And we spoke about this during the actual photo shoot. We kind of knew that there'd be some cleanup. So a lot of this stuff here, you know, kind of along the edges, this is mostly what we're going to be focusing on here. So we'll show you how to like get started with this and then kind of speed things up a little bit. So now that we have our little mock-up, we know what we're going to be doing. We're going to be relying on a few different tools. So we're going to start with the spot healing brush tool, which basically allows you to paint over anything you want to remove, and it pretty much does it automatically. Now, if that doesn't do the exact job you want, then I recommend pulling in the clone stamp tool or even just the brush tool. So let's go ahead. We're just going to turn off our little plan here and create a new layer. And I'm going to go in with my spot healing brush tool. So you can hit J for the spot healing brush tool. Okay. And really any texture that kind of catches your eye, you know, like this little thing kind of sticking off the side there. We've got some like little crumbs and things like that down here. This is just perfect for the spot healing brush tool. It's very, very simple because all this stuff is surrounded by relatively simple colors. There we go. And it's going to do a really nice job. Let's go ahead and paint that away. Paint this away. All right. There we go. And kind of bring that in there. Maybe a little bit of texture. Okay, that's looking good. Fantastic. Now, this area here, basically, I'm looking at all of these little areas that kind of catch light, and that's what I want to take care of here. Anything that makes the cut lines and the bread just look like too jagged, or things that are kind of catching my attention, catching light in general, that's what we want to clean up here. So this is pretty simple process. Really, we're just going in here and painting with the spot healing brush tool and removing some of these textures that are just a little bit too visible. There we go. So I'm going to continue on this. We're going to speed this up for just a second, and then we'll kind of take care of like more difficult areas like that. So speed it up, and you can see, boop, 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 we're going to clean all this up. Well, there we have it. Let's turn this off and on. Here we can see just all the little changes we were able to make.
And this is so simple, honestly. The spot healing brush tool makes this very easy to do. Now, we do have some other like kind of larger areas where the spot healing brush tool is going to struggle a little bit. So here's where we're going to bring in our clone stamp tool. So let's go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to hit S for the clone stamp tool. And in this case, like this whole area, what I want to do is like the whole bottom of this piece of bread kind of needs to be replaced. So my goal is to look for another bottom area of a different part of the image that looks good. So in this case, I want to grab right over here. We're going to hold Alt or Option to sample this area here, and then simply start painting this in. Now, if you don't put it in the exact right place, don't worry about it because we're on a new layer, right? So it's just going to go ahead and, there we go, start painting it in. All right, let's just grab our brush, make it a little bit softer, maybe reduce our flow, and start painting that in. And you can always use your move tool. So in this case, I'm going to use my move tool. Fantastic. Kind of move this around a little bit. And then I'm going to use my brush tool to kind of like soften that up a little bit. All right. So in this case, you can see that actually works pretty well. The only thing I need to take care of is the fact that it's, it's a little bit too in focus because this area of the bread is in focus. This area should have a little bit of a blur to it. So anytime you apply a filter, we're going to use a Gaussian blur here in a second. I highly recommend using a smart object. That'll just allow you to undo your filter at any time. So we're going to right click here. We're going to go to convert to smart object. Then we go to filter, down to blur, and over to Gaussian blur. And here's where we can choose the amount of blur we're going to add to just that layer, which is fantastic. So you can see if I've got too much blur, it just kind of looks like not much detail here. But my goal is to try to match the blur from the rest of the photo. And that actually looks pretty good. 3.5 radius, I think is working well. Now, we're just going to zoom in here. You can see turning this off and on. I think that actually takes care of the problem really well. You can turn the Gaussian blur off and on too to see the effect that that made. And if you need to, you can double click right here on the Gaussian blur itself, and you can change this blur at any time. So you're not stuck. Okay, so that looks good. The only thing I want to do now is keep it from looking exactly like this because it's kind of obvious that it's a copy. So again, we just take our new layer, create a new layer right up there, grab our clone stamp tool, okay? And we're just going to clone stamp right from one part of the image to another part. That's being a little bit difficult. Let's try our spot healing brush tool. So J for the spot healing brush tool. And again, I just need this to look a little bit different. There we go. Just a little bit different. I think we nailed it. So again, just those little details, like here you can kind of see it's just a duplicate, but taking off some of those details, and I think we're looking really good. So as far as our actual spot healing goes, we're almost done. We've just got a couple more things. Any like cracks and things like that in the bread you want to take care of. This is a really good way to do that. So spot healing brush tool just basically like cleans things up a little bit. I think that's just a fantastic tool. It makes this sort of thing relatively easy. We've got just a couple more places to clean up and then we'll be done with this section. So let's go ahead and create a new layer. This area here is still a little bit, just a little bit dark and kind of looks crumbly. So on our new layer, we're just gonna use our clone stamp tool and we're gonna clone stamp in like a new edge here. So S for the clone stamp tool, we're just gonna clone stamp in this new edge. There you go. Super easy to do. We can do the same thing over here. So S for the clone stamp tool and just photograph or clone stamp this new edge in there. There we go. So we're just sampling one area and painting right over another area. Okay, there you go. Look at that, taking care of those little crumble areas. Okay, we're gonna do pretty much the same thing right over here. All right, so sampling, painting right over there. We're gonna switch back to our spot healing brush tool for these little crumble areas. There we go. All right. And the amount that you do this is totally up to you. You know, this is not something that you have to go crazy with every image. And obviously in this case, had the bread not been as crumbly, we wouldn't have to do this cleanup. But there's usually some type of cleanup that needs to be done. All right. Fantastic. So just a tiny bit more clone stamping. I think we're looking really good there. I've got a good level of detail. Overall, the bread looks nice and clean. Let's go ahead and just group those together. Control or Command G, and take a look. Here's our before and after. So there we go. There's the before and the after. You can see that's a big difference in cleaning up our image, and it just took a couple of minutes. Now our image is looking great. There's only a couple more things to do. In our next section, we're gonna add a little bit more color. We're gonna do some dodging and burning, and we're gonna go ahead and sharpen this image, make it look perfect.
Hey there, welcome to our final shoot. Now we're still photographing cookies, but this time we're gonna be bringing people in, and everything we're gonna be shooting is gonna be from the top down. So in a few minutes, we're gonna bring in our camera. We're gonna put it on a boom arm. We'll show you some really great tips and tricks for getting a camera on a light stand. Now we do have a nice wooden surface here, but to match our subject's brand, we wanna go with a lighter color. So I'm gonna be bringing in a different material that we're gonna use as the base. And I've got a great little tip for you. I actually got this at like a countertop place where they cut stone and tile and things like that. It was basically just scrap, and a lot of the time they just have this stuff that they're gonna throw away, and you can get some beautiful, beautiful surfaces to shoot with for really, really inexpensive. So for now, we're just gonna shoot from the top down. So this is pretty much good to go. It's time to bring in our overhead boom, which is basically just a light stand with a boom on it, and we're gonna show you how to attach your camera to that. Basically, we just have a light stand here with a small boom attached to it. This is something that you would normally attach a light to, but we've got a great technique for actually adding tripod accessories to these booms. Here at the end, let me just take this off real quick. This is just called a knuckle, basically. It's a way for you to attach all kinds of accessories to a light stand. And we've just put basically one of these 3/8 inch little rods in here. So once that's attached, there we go. Let's go ahead and clamp this in. You can see this has a 3/8 inch threading on it, which will actually fit with a tripod head. So let me go ahead and grab my tripod. It's back here. So we'll just go ahead and unscrew this. Most tripods you get come with a tripod base and a separate tripod head. And this has a 3/8 inch threading as well. So we're gonna put this aside for now and simply go ahead and screw on our tripod head. Fantastic. Make sure it's really nice and tight. We don't want it to let up. Pretty much everything, make sure it's nice and tight. Now we have our tripod head that's attached to our boom arm, and we can adjust the tilt of this. So from here, it's very easy to go ahead and set the camera on here. And we're just gonna use a standard, this is a Manfrotto tripod with a standard plate here in front. And basically, we just pop this right on top of there. Fantastic. Now we have our tether cable. We're just going to go ahead and run this. I've got a little piece of tape here to kind of tape this, make sure that it's in place, and run it back over here. At this point, you can do things like adjust your tilt super easily because we're using a 3-axis head here. So I can adjust, any axis that I want independently. I've got some bubble levels here just to make sure we're nice and level. And then all we have to do is adjust our height to make sure that we're shooting at the right height, because this is a 90mm fixed focal length lens. So I can't zoom in and out. So I'm going to have to use the height of my light stand to make sure that I'm getting the right dimensions here. Now we do have one more step with our little rig here. Anytime I've got a camera on kind of a complicated rig where things could go wrong, it's a good idea to include a safety cable. These you can just order online. It's just a metal cable with a little carabiner. Now, in this case, this safety cable is actually attached to my grip. So this grip is very, very strong on my light stand. And what I want to make sure is that the safety cable is attached to my camera as well. That way, let's say I'm taking my camera off the tripod. If I drop it or anything happens, it's going to be caught by this safety cable. So your safety cable comes with a couple of loops here. I'm going to loop it through. I've actually got a little mount here for a neck strap that I'm not currently using, but it's a very sturdy mount. There we go. So we're going to loop that through my camera body. Go ahead and bring the other side through, and then just tighten it with a carabiner. There we go. So I've got a complete metal secure connection from my rig to the camera body itself. That way, if my camera body were to fall off, my camera is going to stay safe. People below are going to stay safe as well. So it's just another level of security that is super important when you do this sort of thing. So now that our camera is on our overhead mount, we're just going to make sure that we adjust it to properly photograph our background. So we're just going to drag that around. There we go. This thing is heavy. But now it's in the same orientation as the camera. So again, we're going to be shooting tethered for this entire experience. So I went ahead and opened my tethered capture software. And here I have a little preview of what we're going to be seeing. I can press my autofocus button and it's going to autofocus. Now from here, I want to make sure I'm capturing as much of my surface background as possible. So we're going to adjust the height of our light stand, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this into about the center of the object, because once we get this locked in, we really don't want to move much. Now at this point, as you can see, we are not really going to be able to touch the camera that much. So I'm going to make sure that we are in autofocus here. And on this lens, it's like a push-pull here. So we're going to switch to autofocus. We do have some weight kind of extended out. So it's really important to put weight on the base of your tripod as well. So I've got a couple sandbags here. They'll do a nice job weighting down the base of our light stand. Here we go. Now, even if I try here, I'm not going to be able to push this light stand over. Now, our light stand also has a place to add a sandbag here, which is going to counterbalance any weight that we have there. So we've got a much smaller sandbag here. There we go. And we're going to simply clip this. Not a horrible idea to do this before you raise it. So we're going to clip this to the end. That way the amount of weight on this side is pretty much approximate to the amount of weight that's on that side. So safety is always number one, super important, especially when you do any kind of rig like this. Now, if you're doing this at home and you don't have all this type of gear, you can simply just lower everything down. You could bring your tabletop setup to the floor, simply photograph everything on the floor, stand over it, and take some pictures just like this. Especially if you're going to be working all day, it's nicer to be working on a surface like this so you don't have to go to the floor every time. But you can most definitely do this on a budget as well. So we're going to go ahead and bring in our gray card now, and we're going to be photographing quite a bit in natural light for this chapter. So we want to bring in our gray card. I'm just going to pop it right here so we have something to focus on. And then we'll go ahead and take a picture with our camera. So we've got our remote capture software here. There we go. And I can take a picture right here. So I just took a picture with the gray card, but we're shooting in manual mode and I've still got my settings from when we were using flashes. So obviously we are not using flashes right now, meaning my exposure is way too dark. So what we're going to do is go ahead and adjust our exposure. Now, thankfully I can do this here in my software. If I needed to adjust on the camera, not a big deal. We could lower the light stand, I could make adjustments, or I could get on a ladder. But because we have the software, this is what I prefer to use. So I'm actually going to bring our aperture to f16. There we go, because I do want a wide depth of field. I'm totally okay bringing up my ISO, even to 800 is okay. And we're just going to use a slightly longer shutter speed. I want to make sure to change my white balance here. We're going to make sure our white balance is just set to auto white balance. There we go. And then we're going to take a picture here again. So our camera is going to autofocus. We're using a long shutter speed in this case, but that's totally okay because really nothing is moving. And we just want to make sure that nothing moves for the majority of the shot. Also, we do want a little bit of movement in the hands of our subjects, so we're purposely using a long shutter speed in this case. And you can see we've got a proper exposure. I can go ahead and zoom in here. Even though I'm shooting at 1/4 of a second, you can see our image is actually really nice and sharp. So that's pretty much it for our setup. In our next section, we're going to do props and styling, bringing in some cookies, and we want to really get this set up with an idea of where the hands are going to be, but first we want to make sure that everything is set up with the cookies, and then we're going to adjust our lighting. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next section. Hey there and welcome back. So exciting here. Our scene is set up. Now, at this point, the coolest thing about this, in my opinion, is that I can just move the camera around and the lighting is going to look great no matter where I put it. And because we're shooting at a fast shutter speed and using strobe lights, it really doesn't matter if I'm handheld. So I like to set up my scene with everything on a tripod. It's just a nice way you can work here and see how everything looks. But at this point, I highly recommend taking your camera off the tripod and just getting an idea of what you're photographing. Now, of course, you can look through the eyepiece if you want. You can also just, look at the monitor. And at this point, what I'm gonna focus on is just taking a look at my composition. I've got all of my elements here. Now, moving things around subtly, like totally, no problem. Like you can definitely, let's say I come back over here, I'm looking at a very different scene than what I started with. And for this scene over here, I might want to just move my banana bread subtly for composition. So let's go ahead and focus on the banana bread. There we go. Nice and close. And get a different composition. So everything is pretty much in place. I want to get a few different, there we go. I want to get a few different looks here. So I'm going to try to get a little bit higher. I'm going to get a little bit lower. There we go. Now at this lower angle here, okay, there we go. You can see when I'm over here with this lower angle, I start to lose the blueberries, or they just become a little bit of a blob in the background, which I definitely don't want. So I'm going to bring this right over here So I still get the blueberries in the background, the fresh blueberries. There we go. And take a picture. Maybe we'll raise it ever so slightly. Take a photo there as well. Okay, now comes time to raise the camera up. This camera has an articulating screen, which I like because I can bring the camera up and still see what I'm doing. There we go. And we're going to photograph some things, a little bit zoomed out. So you see the whole scene there. I realize I'm kind of working on a small set right now. It would be nice to have more of a surface, but we have what we have. So if I need to do some clone stamp work to extend the surface, I can totally do that. So photographing from the top down, I just want to make sure we get a little bit wider shots to show just about everything in the photo. And then I also want to get some tight photographs as well that kind of get us a little bit closer to the product. There we go. And here we have some nice detail photos as well. Okay, just coming around here, and mostly I'm moving around to make sure that my composition looks good wherever I go. Now, as I start to come around this way, got my tether cable around here. So I start to come around this way, I'm going to have a very different type of a photo, especially because now I'm coming from the same direction as my main light. So I didn't really design the photo to be photographed from this direction. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that actually looks like. It kind of looks a little bit flat and a little bit, it's not exactly the type of lighting that I would choose. For instance, if we go back just one, here we go. Okay, here we can see that nice lighting. It's a beautiful detailed shot that's giving us exactly the effect that I want. So because our main light is here, the brightest light, generally we don't want to be coming from the same angle because your light in general will look a little bit more flat. It's kind of like photographing someone with an on-camera flash, okay? The light and the camera coming from the same angle. So what I want to do is start bringing things around in this direction. Now, if I really wanted to photograph in from this angle, what I would do is actually increase the brightness of that light and decrease the brightness of this light to change the ratio. So I'm photographing into the brighter light rather than having the brighter light at the same side of the camera. But in this case, I don't think we really need it because our photographs look beautiful. Let me just go ahead and get my tethered cable up here, and we're going to do some top down. So again, super easy here. I'm just going to go right up here. There we go, and get some top down shots. All right. Fantastic. And I'm kind of like in my softbox at this point. Okay, we're just going to push things a little bit closer together for composition here. Actually, this milk looked a little bit better over there. All right, and beautiful. And then I want to make sure I get a top-down shot with just my product on the plate. So we're going to go ahead and take out our accessories. All right, little blueberries and the milk. We're going to get this just right here. Fantastic. And we're going to go right up to the top here and photograph this from the top down. And I can kind of barely see what I'm doing, but that's okay because in a second it's going to pop up right here and I'll get a very clear idea of what I'm doing. For this top-down photograph, I just want to change my cloth here because it's not covering as much of the scene. So we're actually gonna do two things. We're gonna photograph just this on the surface, so the plate just on the surface. All right, I'm trying to move up and up and up. All right, there we go. Now, of course, we could put this all on a rig, and we're going to be doing that for another section. But in this case, I want to see what I can get just handheld. And of course, I do have my tether preview monitor here, as you can see. It's just a little bit difficult to do that. All right, that actually looks really, really nice. So here we have our product basically all on white background with a beautiful stone underneath it. And then we've got one more variation here that I want to do. And of course, I mean, personally, I could just do this all day long. I love this type of photography. It's so much fun. But especially when, you're trying to get through a bunch of images. Let's say you're working with your client or whatever. Like for working with Danielle for Tubby's Taste, for instance, we're photographing quite a bit. So I want to get the biggest bang for my buck here. I want to get as many photographs as I can with variation in a short period of time. So we've got one more surface here. We're going to go ahead and photograph that. All right, get this as high as possible here. Fantastic. Woo! Having this articulated screen really helps out. It's kind of hard to do that. In our section on the hands, we're going to go over mounting the camera to an overhead boom. So it really takes all the guesswork there as well. All right. Oh, there we go. Cool. Crop that in just a little bit of perspective correction. I'm going to do one more, but I think we're looking fantastic. All right, one more variation here. Just want to make sure my framing straight out of camera is as good as possible. There we go. I think we got it. Well, there we have it. Multiple different angles. Let's go through our shots. We get some really, really good photos here. So on different types of backgrounds, we can choose these images. Our client can choose the images that they want as well. And with this variation, we have so many different, that's just a beautiful photograph, if I say so myself. But we have a lot of variation to choose from here. And the nicest thing about this is once you get your lighting consistent or set up and good to go, you're ready to create all these different photographs from the same scene. All right, and they each have a different type of personality. This shows the detail, like the really nice, rich, fine detail of the banana bread. And then we have a little bit more like graphic images. There we go, like from the top down. Fantastic, that shows how the slice looks, but still in a bit of a setting. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this section on our stylized shoot. I've had a blast, super, super fun here. Now, if you haven't already done so, please leave a review of this tutorial on Flurn.com. It'd mean a ton. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next section where we get into retouching our products. Hey there and welcome back. In this section, we're going to be creating a few different variations of our product. Now, our lighting is good to go. We don't need to change that anymore. I can just simply readjust this and take more pictures. So because the cookies are dark on a light background, I want to add a couple more elements, but compositionally, I still want the focus to be on the cookies. So we've got two different objects we're going to add. Now, they're both very light in color, so that's actually perfect, and they're going to be out of focus. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to set these behind the cookies. There we go. And what this does just creates like a little bit of a scene. Now, I'm just going to change my composition a tiny bit there to see what we've got. And let's go ahead and take a picture. So this looks great. Looking at our final image here, I think we could just adjust it maybe a little bit. So we'll just bring the milk in maybe a little bit closer there. There we go. Our napkin, we'll just change that a little bit and take another photograph. All right. Now, one more little detail that I want to add are little cookie crumbles. I gathered these earlier. These are actually crumbles from these ginger cookies. And now I just kind of want to sprinkle them around the area. Now, just like with everything else, I'm going to have a little bit of care as I place these. There we go. Kind of finding the balance between something that looks random, but also like not too random. It's kind of an interesting balance to play. All right, let's go ahead and start there. We'll take a picture. And you know what? Just looking at that on the big screen, I'm like, that's way too much, Aaron. Calm it down with your cookie crumbles. So I'm going to take a couple of these out. There we go. So we just want them to be like right near our product. They don't need to be everywhere. But I find that, you know, little details like this, they just kind of make it seem like, it's not so staged, it's not so perfect. And also, this sort of thing can help give the cookies a little bit of scale. So it just adds to the feeling, creates a different feeling altogether again. And again, it's totally up to you. You can have like a super clean feeling with, you know, no scattered bits and things like this, or you can go for the little bit of crumbles. I still think maybe I have a little bit too many in there. So let's just take a couple out. Again, all I have to do is move a couple of these, take another picture, and we're good to go. It's very easy to do. I move the cookies a little bit, but that's not a big deal either. All right. Also, I do want to mention, with tools like the spot healing brush tool in Photoshop, if you wanted to remove an individual crumble, it would take like literally 2 seconds to do that. So let's just be sure we have our reflector in there. There we go. This is something that, you know, once you get in the groove of things, it should be pretty obvious. Now, it's not a horrible idea to bring your reflector in from both sides. If you need to combine those together in post-production later, you can do that as well. So I'm pretty happy with this. What I'm going to do is just take my stack apart, and we're just going to do a different stack. So this time, I want a little bit more of like a haphazard approach. This cookie is actually like broken here. Not a problem though. All right, we've got like a little bit of a, you know, little bit of mix. And I'm going to start over with my crumbles as well. Now you can see obviously these cookies have a little bit of oil in them because they've just kind of marked this surface. Right now I'm just using this poster board, but you can use kind of whatever surface you want. In later sections we're going to be bringing in other surfaces as well. You can use like marble, you can use tile, you can use pieces of wood, and even just plates. Okay, and we'll take a picture there. Just going to make sure I set my manual focus. Beautiful. And we want to bring in our reflector. Make sure it's not in the shot, obviously. Fantastic. That looks great. And then I'm going to throw in just a couple of these little crumbles. I think in this case, like less is more. All right. And that looks really good too. So we've got a white plate here. Now, again, I'm choosing white. I want the cookies to be the focus area. Everything is pretty much white except for the cookies themselves. So same deal here. We're just going to take the cookies off. I'm going to put them right here. Now, personally, I like things in odds and evens. So I'm choosing 3 cookies here. There we go. You could do 5. You know, just personally, I don't usually do sets of like 2 or 4. All right. There we go. And I'm just going to adjust my focus ever so subtly. Kind of bring it forward a little bit more. Make sure we bring our reflector in. So here we went from a tabletop setup that was just pure white, which is fantastic because we have that as a product shot, and just with a couple simple props, now we've built in a little bit of a scene, built in a little bit more of a story, and it seems like it's, you know, like on a table you could kind of grab from them. And of course we're going to do a variation with a couple of these little crumbles in here as well. All right, just kind of throw these in. It's kind of funny to make things look like like it's like purposely making things look a little bit messy. Just compositionally, I think we are looking great, but I think our cookies just have to go back in space a little bit. There we go, which will just give us a little bit more room to kind of crop in if we need to. All right, there we go. I just want to make sure to adjust my focus because we are using manual focus here. Okay, we'll bring in our reflector. Seems to be really nice on this side here. You can kind of play with, you know, whatever side works best for you. And here we have like a really nice little scene. It didn't take a long time. It's basically like the same idea that we were going with just a couple cookies stacked on a plate, but now we have a few different elements in the photo that just give it a little bit more life. So we're looking great. Now it's time to just get a couple more variations. We're going to do a different type of stack here. There we go. Alrighty. I think that looks pretty good. So I think that looks great. Now, just a couple of things. I think this plate is maybe a little bit too big. So I'm going to take it back out of the shot. Okay. We're going to do just like a different stack here. And I want to change my composition simply by lowering my camera angle. So we're going to bring the camera down a little bit. There we go. And recompose our shot focused on our cookies. Let's go ahead and bring those a little bit more to the front. And at this point, we're simply just arranging our scene and making sure that everything, you know, looks nice and appetizing. Because my goal for this is, you know, for us to want to like get in there and grab some of these cookies, you know, and just like eat them. There we go. Perfect. All right, that looks good. Let's go ahead and bring up our reflector. Fantastic. So all of these shots you can see I'm doing in a relatively short period of time. Now that looks great. One thing I want to make sure that I'm always doing is also getting a top-down shot. So for this, we're going to simply take these props out. We're going to take my jar of milk out. There we go. That shot looks great. We're going to take all these other cookies out here. I'm going to choose my favorite looking one. There we are. And we're just going to go ahead and clear our crumbs off. All right. And then put this right where all the other cookies are. So I can do very easily, I can get a single cookie here while I'm at it. Okay. I'm going to pop this into autofocus now, take it off of the tripod. Now I have a little articulating screen, which is kind of nice. I'm able to just articulate this screen out a little bit, and so I can photograph from the top down extremely easily. So we'll just press and hold. I've got autofocus on now. There we go. And now I've got a top-down shot as well. And again, it's lit in the same way. So provided that I just change things around in my scene, everything should be consistent from one shot to another, and we've got a lot more variation than just one stack of cookies. So let's go ahead and take a look. Here we have our cookie from the top down. I'm just going to go through and hold Control or Command and click on a few of my favorites that I think just like have turned out really nice. And there we go. That one looks fantastic. We've got these individual ones. You know, we've got some with no crumbles here. I think this looks really, really nice. So I'm going to hit N for survey view, and here we can see our different photos of the cookies. again, slight variations, but we can see we've got perfect on white. We've got the scene with some elements in the background with no crumbles. We've got some crumbles, a couple of different stacks, and then just one cookie straight on white. So this gives us a ton of variation, especially when posting this to the website. You think, modern day websites, e-commerce, you want to scroll through and see a few different pictures. So here we could see what it looks like in a scene, a small stack, and individually. This is all just on white, very easy to do. So that's it for our variations. In our next section, we're going to do a little bit of on-set post-production. Welcome back. It's time to build our scene with our props and, of course, our blueberry banana bread. Now, a couple of choices we have when we're pulling all this stuff together, because really in these scenes, we're choosing everything about the scene. We have a light colored stone base here and a background, but this could have been wood, or it could have been dark slate, things like that. So all of these choices play together. Now, the person we're collaborating with, Danielle, wanted lighter themed images. That's part of her brand. So obviously we're doing this intentionally for that purpose, and everything that we're choosing is going to be along those lines as well. So always options. I mean, food photography can be beautiful on very dark surfaces as well. We just happen to be going with light. So we're working with white and very light plates. We're going to be working with napkins here as well, which I think is going to add just a lot of nice texture to these shots. And we're working with blueberry banana bread. So I chose napkins that have blue stripes in them. And the blue in the napkin, the blue in the blueberries, just really ties everything together. So I think it's just a fun place to kind of play around, and the idea of color theory and how different colors play with each other, not just in the food, but in the props and styling. I think that really makes a very special image. Now, Danielle also has strawberry banana bread, and for that, I chose red napkins. But for now, we're focusing on the blueberry. So the first thing we're going to do is start off here with our napkin. This is just a very dark blue napkin. Now, it's a cloth napkin, which I think just kind of makes it look a little bit more, fancy and just nice in general. It's kind of funny. These napkins are they're not used for actual, eating. These are literally just for photo props and things like that. So it's nice and clean. So we're going to start there. Now, next we're going to build this scene a little bit. And we're going to bring a plate in. So we just have a white plate here. It's rectangular. My plan is to slice the banana bread really nice and thin, and then lay it down in the plate. So another thing that I like to look for is the shape of the object that I'm photographing, and the best plate or dish to put that on, and the best type of presentation. So because we're going to be slicing it and laying it out in kind of a thin line, this plate is actually going to work perfectly because the banana bread should take up a decent bit of this plate. For instance, round products, I would put those on a round plate and try to match the plate size with about the size of the object as well. So your choice of dishware plays a big role in the final product itself. So we're going to just place that right here on top of our dish towel. There we go. Now we can kind of move all these things around. I haven't even looked at the camera yet, but we're just kind of pulling different elements together. So next we're going to bring in some fresh blueberries, and obviously this is blueberry banana bread. And I think there's something really nice because the banana bread has baked blueberries. I mean, they're beautiful. They kind of like, you know, become like baked and they explode and juice runs out and they're awesome, obviously. But I think having fresh blueberries in the shot gives it a nice contrast as well and adds a little bit of freshness to the scene. And including ingredients that go into the final product can just help round everything out. So for that, we've got just a tin of nice fresh blueberries here. There we go. Now, I don't want to just include these, you know, I don't want to just put this tin here. What we're going to do is, again, we have small round blueberries, okay? So we're going to stack them in this small round plate. And also, you know, I want to be pretty cognizant of how these blueberries are placed in the shot. I don't want to just throw them in here necessarily. I kind of want everything to be, you know, like organized and, you know, I want the nice, like, tops of the blueberries to be facing up. And if I stumble upon a blueberry that, you know, is half smushed or something like that, I'm just not going to include that blueberry. So, you know, everything in this shot we want to place. Also, you definitely want a mix between making it look perfect and making it look like, hey, there's just a plate of blueberries here. So I'm doing my best to strike that balance as I place these blueberries in. There we go. So they're not all facing like totally, you know, straight up and down on purpose. There we go. But if some fall over, I'm going to go ahead and turn them back around. There we go. So when we photograph the blueberries, even though they're going to be in the background and out of focus, you know, they should still be a really nice addition to our final image here. Just a couple more. And it really is these little details that, you know, make a difference. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit of a jiggle just so it's like, you know, has that element of, hey, I wasn't just put here for a prop in a photo shoot, you know, which is kind of what we're always trying to balance here. All right, I'm going to find one more tiny little one to kind of fill this area. So there we go, and I'm arranging this to my eye. You know, I want a nice round shape here, and then these blueberries are perfect and ready to go into our scene. So we close the tin and take them back out again. Next, we're going to add a glass of milk. So let's go ahead and grab this. We already have it ready to go. And again, we're choosing glasses of milk, I mean, for a couple of reasons. Obviously, these are like baked goods and milk and cookies is a thing. People like this. But also, it fits with the overall color theme of our image. So, you know, white milk on our white background. And this is just in a clear, you know, colorless jar. So everything in this scene is either white or, you know, in this case, a little bit of gray, stone material, or blue. And already this looks like, you know, it looks like a nice scene, and we don't even have any banana bread in. So now it's time to get our banana bread. We're going to go ahead and put it in the scene, slice it up, and then it's going to be time to light everything and start taking some pictures. Let's go ahead and pull this in, and we're going to be slicing this on set here. Now, I do recommend having, you know, the sharpest knife you can possibly find for doing things like this, and start slicing it. So we're going to come around here, and I want thin slices. If the slices are too thick, one, I'm not going to be able to make as many slices, and it might not fall as easily. Somewhere a little bit larger than 1/4 of an inch slices. As I slice, I'm going to start bringing the pieces down as well. So I'm using a sharp knife here. This is a beautiful. This is a ceramic knife. Super sharp, but a little bit on the fragile side. So if you ever get a ceramic knife, just be careful with it. I love them, but I've broken one. I tried to butcher a chicken. Cutting through the bone, I just totally cracked and broke the knife. So don't do that. All right, so we've cut our banana bread. It looks great, but it's still a little bit, well, it's kind of sloppy, to be honest. So what we're gonna do, let's just pull a little scrap plate here. First, and I want to look on camera just to make sure, I want to make sure that, things are not kind of falling apart, and there's like a little bits of this. So I'm just going to kind of pull this off and, put it on our plate here. I also have these tweezers, which I ordered online, and they're really good for, getting little details and things like that maybe your hands are just not going to be that good at getting here. There we go. So taking these little bits. Now, I don't mind a little bit of crumbles, but it was just starting to look kind of sloppy in general. Not necessarily to the naked eye, but definitely on camera, especially because we're photographing all this with a macro lens. So kind of cleaning up a little bit of these, areas that are kind of hanging off there a little bit. And, the nice thing is I really just have to do this on one side because I'm not going to be photographing the other side. Actually, let's go ahead and flip this around and see what side we like better, because I actually do think I like this side better. That's okay. We can just redo this. Not a problem at all. Okay, let's go ahead and bring that in. Stuff down. See, my fingers are just a little bit too large for a lot of this stuff. I mean, you could use like a pen or something like this, or a knife. I just have these awesome giant tweezers, so this is what I'm going to use here. There we go. Alrighty. And let's go ahead and bring all this in. Fantastic. And we're going to light it mostly from this direction anyway, coming from this direction. So this side's going to be a little bit in the dark, so we're not going to see it, kind of nearly as much. Fantastic. So this really looks nice already for our props and styling. When we do our lighting, there we go. Let's just kind of do some arranging of this. When we do our lighting, we'll kind of bring everything together, and we can arrange our props a little bit more there as well. I think we're looking great, and we are ready to move on to our section on lighting. So thank you so much. We'll see you then. Hey there and welcome back. In this section, we're going to be bringing in our props, we're going to do styling, we're going to bring the cookies in as well, and the camera is staying completely still. So building the scene in front of the camera, this is where like the creativity and the magic happens. So we have a few different elements to bring in. I want to make sure I'm sticking with our client's brand. They wanted everything very light in color, and so we've got this light surface here. Our foods, our plates, everything is also light, and that's going to help bring attention to the cookies. So we're going to go ahead and start building our shot. Now, we're going to use a combination here of plates as well as cookies just like out and about. And basically, I want to start with one of these small rectangular plates, and we're going to place a few of these. These are the mango cookies. We're going to go ahead and start placing a few of these cookies on the plate. There we go. You know, when I first started doing this type of photography, I kind of tried to include everything in the frame, putting this right here in the center and then putting some elements around it. But kind of makes sense to have some areas like slightly outside of the frame. And what that does is it gives you the sense that, there's a little bit more going on in this scene and that it's not just like perfectly set up for the camera. It makes it feel a little bit more organic, in my opinion. I've also got some napkins here, which is just going to bring in a little bit of like soft material. There we go. So at this point, I mean, really, this is like kind of working things in and seeing how they look and, kind of building your composition in camera. There we go. So I'm going to bring some of these ginger snap cookies in here. We're just going to kind of place these front and center because they're really beautiful. There we go. A couple of those. And we've got some chocolate chips here as well. So we're going to start putting our props in and seeing how they look. There we go, and building our scene. Now, we have some square plates. We're going to try using some circular plates as well. And this is, I mean, really where the majority of the energy goes with this type of photography, is making sure that everything kind of like works together for your end image. So kind of bringing these in, we've got a whole bit of cookies here. And again, having live view very, very much helps out. Okay, so that looks great. I also have a little bowl of just chocolate chips because we have chocolate chip cookies. So we're going to bring that slightly out of frame right up here. There we go. And we've got some chocolate chip cookies right there, and then some gingers. We actually have a little bit more of this type of ginger, so we're going to bring in, there we go, bring in some of these as well. Okay, so things are just looking a little bit like haphazard right now, and I'm not taking pictures because, again, I can see what we're doing with live view. So we're just going to kind of give it a little bit of, there we go, a little bit of life here. We've got a little napkin. There we go, to add some soft areas there. All right, fantastic. Now, I think bringing in another plate here, let's put it right up here. Fantastic. Now I'm kind of running out of surface area a little bit, so I'm just going to take one of these plates, just turn it upside down to give the plate here something to rest on. There we go. Fantastic. And we're going to start bringing in some more cookies here. There we are. You just bring in a second surface here. I need to just build a little bit of height. There we go. Kind of match what we've got going on there. Fantastic. And as I bring all these cookies in, we're just starting to build our scene. And as you can see, I'm making, taking special care to make sure that I'm arranging my cookies in a way that looks good, All right, there we go. We're going to go ahead and set this in. Okay. So I just grabbed a couple more cookies and a glass of milk, and we're just, again, continuing to bring these shots, elements in a way that just kind of helps to tell the story of this scene. Okay. Cool. I'm not trying to fill the frame. Mostly I just want to give it like a little bit of visual weight. So you can see we've got a large plate here, we've got here, and then I've kind of like done a little bit of like a triangle in terms of our composition. So we're going to go ahead and start bringing in a few more of these cookies, and I want to just place a few of them, right here directly on the surface. And the key is to kind of place these in a way that, feels kind of like natural and, Also at the same time, like we're not just doing exactly what we are, which is simply just like posing these cookies. I really like to try to take my time with this and, kind of build the scene. Sometimes I'll have an idea of something that I'm working with, and I'll think, oh, that's really going to work well. And then, start shooting it and realize, yeah, you know what, that's just kind of not really exactly what I was thinking, or not exactly what I was going for. So at this point, I'm totally open to just kind of like changing what we do here. I'm going to add just a few more cookies to this plate here. There we go. And go ahead and bring this in. We'll just put one here in the center. And this is a really large part of making these photos look special and nice, is making sure everything is arranged beautifully on the plate. Okay. Now, just looking at my composition here, because we do have plates, originally I was planning on doing cookies on plates as well as cookies off the plates, but the cookies off the plates feels a little bit unnatural in this case because we do have plates. It feels like, why do we have some cookies on a plate and some cookies off the plate? So we're going to just add these cookies to a plate, and that's going to help with our composition as well. All right, so we've got a few different plates of cookies. Fantastic. And I think we're looking great. We're getting close to where we want to be. So we just brought in our last plate here, and we're going to be placing the chocolate chip cookies on the plate as well. So I've basically got a pattern here. For my other cookies, I'm going to do my best to resemble it here with our large chocolate chip cookies also. These are fantastic. I wish you could jump right through your screen and taste these cookies because they're incredible. And they're vegan, so, no guilt, right? That's how vegan works, right? Eat whatever you want. All right, there we go. And we're going to place one of these in the center as well and pop this out. Fantastic. So we've got 3. There we go. And we're just going to start moving things around. So what I'll generally do is start off with my larger elements, get those in place, and then start bringing in additional smaller elements. So I really want to start off with our 3 plates here. There we go. And again, keep in mind we're creating a very graphic type image. So, I'll just put this in place and rotate it around and kind of keep putting it in different places until I think like, oh, cool, that's a really nice view of that, I kind of don't want these to be exactly even. I want it to look a little bit more like haphazardy. Okay, good deal. And yeah, let's pull that one out a little bit and pull this one in. Again, we're just kind of creating our composition based on what's going on with the plates. All right, so we'll bring a little bit like a glass of milk in for this. All right, and then I've got my little plate of chocolate chips here as well. Okay, now I think this looks really great. I'm kind of planning on a hand coming in here to reach some of the cookies, and as you can see, that's going to take some of that composition. We can also bring a hand here. We don't really want to like cover up the cookies with a hand necessarily, so a hand can kind of come in, here to grab the cookies. It can come in from the other side to grab a cookie. We can, of course, bring hands in like this. So I'm pretty happy with this composition. Now, I am expecting this to change just a little bit as we continue with the shoot because, we haven't brought all of our people in, that's still a big part of this image, and we need to see how people are interacting. So you can see even just through this section, we kind of evolved the shoot a little bit, but it's just based on, what looks good graphically. And I think we have a very solid image. Now, again, this would not be a complete composition, in my opinion, if we were not adding hands, because there's a lot of blank space here that just seems like a little bit too much. If I wanted blank space, and we are going to do that in a later section, I would just remove some of these elements completely. But for now, we're leaving this area in here when it's time to add our hands into the scene. Well, that's it for our props and styling. Next, we're going to move into our lighting. Thanks so much. We'll see you then. Hey there, and welcome to our literally sweet little interview with Danielle Tubbs of Tubby's Taste. I'm so excited for two reasons. First, because we get to know more about you, but I'm also very excited because my personal goal is to have a little bit of all of these cookies during this interview.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
Yeah, it's a real... it's a real sacrifice, but I'm willing to put in the work. We're going to start this off. I'm going to take a little bite of, what is this one to start off with?
So this is actually called the Oh Wow Yum.
All right.
But it's a dark chocolate chip sea salt cookie.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are all your products vegan?
They are. They're all surprisingly vegan.
I love that. Surprisingly vegan.
And there's like a story behind all of them as well.
Okay, so tell me that story while I muncharoo.
Okay, sure. So these Oh Wow Yum cookies, they're dark chocolate chip sea salt. And for me, my first memory of chocolate is my grandmother making all of us grandkids chocolate tea at Christmas time. So my mom's side of the family is Jamaican, and instead of hot cocoa or hot chocolate, Jamaicans make chocolate tea around special holidays.
Cool.
So it's like cacao grated up and boiled with water, and they add milk to it, and of course sugar. And so obviously, since this is vegan, there's no milk in there. But yeah, that's kind of my first memory of chocolate and kind of my inspiration behind these cookies.
I think your inspiration is spot on. This is absolutely delicious. And it's got a lot of crunch too. Like it's like pretty real. I would say it's Crunch-alicious.
Yeah, those are the crispiest cookies that I make, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about just like yourself and your brand, your business, how you got started. Let me know.
Yeah, my name's Danielle Tubbs. The name of my company is Tubby's Taste. In college, I kind of got the nickname Tubby because of my last name. But I like to tell people that I come from a long line of Jamaican cake ladies. So it's safe to say that baking is in my blood. So I don't have a professional culinary background, but I definitely was like a home baker. I think once I moved to Chicago from Miami, where I grew up, I wanted to kind of continue in that tradition of baking because I grew up seeing my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother bake all the traditional Jamaican cakes for like the community and bring people together, keep people connected to their culture. And so when I moved to Chicago, I started baking just for fun, thinking that everyone could do this. And over some time, my roommate at the time was like, no, this is an actual talent. Like she said, I burn things from a box. So after that, I kind of started taking it seriously, came up with a name. But for years, I was just bringing stuff to work and church and parties. And over some time, one of my friends who's vegan was like, I wish you'd make something that we both could enjoy. And so out of the initiative to be more inclusive, bring more people together, make something that more people could have and enjoy, I started making all of my products vegan. So My one caveat was if I was making my stuff vegan, they had to pass my taste test, hence Tubby's Taste.
Oh, I love it. I didn't know that. Passed my taste test also.
Great.
That's so cool. So tell us a little bit about like what you wanted out of these photos, like what you're doing as a business and what you need photos for.
Sure. So a lot of my photos that I currently had were outdated. They didn't include my newer products, or they were kind of taken by myself, and I'm no photographer by any means. So I wanted photos that were crisp, that were clean, that were bright, that kind of really showed off what I make and all of my products. Because currently I sell at markets and I also do catering, and I'm starting to get into wholesale. So I wanted to have kind of some clean white background shots of my products as well as stylized products too.
Yeah, totally. Because like on a product page itself on a website, like you would need to see the product like by itself, but then for like a banner or like an ad or like a home page, it's really nice to have like just a beautiful stylized photo. We're gonna get you all of those things, all of the above.
Thank you.
Before we get into our next question, it's time for the next cookie. What do we have in front of us here?
So these are the mango coconut lime cookies, and they're actually called Home Sweet Home.
I love it.
They remind me of Miami. Growing up with my grandmother, she would, again, with all of her grandkids, we had like a mango tree and she would pick mangoes and then cut them up for us. And in my opinion, the favorite grandkid always got the seed of the mango with a lot of the fruit on it.
I love the seed.
Yeah.
You gotta hold it though. That's
Exactly.
like no silverware. You
Yeah.
cannot.
So we all like had to sit over the sink and eat it, and then the juice was dripping. And even now as an adult, like whenever I get a mango, I still eat it over the sink. But these cookies kind of remind me of that.
I told myself I was gonna have one bite of each of these. I'm gonna have 2 bites of this one.
Those are my favorite currently.
Oh God, that was so good. So early, it was really important, for us, and something that you did was you found some inspiration images online and sent them over. Can you kind of tell us about that process?
Sure. So I went online, I searched for photos of like cookies and desserts and different like banana breads, and saw kind of the different styles that I could go in. And for me, it was important that the photos were kind of clean and maybe showed some of like the ingredients involved in the making of those products, because in my opinion, like Tubby's Taste products kind of speak for themselves. I don't need to do too much. And it's important for me to like share with people like what actually goes into my products. There's no kind of hiding that I have to do, because I'm really proud of the ingredients that I use and I'm really proud of the flavors. And so it was most important for me to just have like the photos be bright, be airy, and also like show what went into making the products. Yeah.
So you collected a bunch of inspiration images, sent them over to us, which really helped out because, you can go so many different ways. We could have had like dark, moody tablecloths. Like there's many different ways in which you can do this, but you sending over that inspiration, gave me confidence that I could execute on that. Now, specifically our shot with the hands. Can you talk about why you wanted that shot?
Sure. I mean, part of my company and the reason why I do these things or make these products is I'm kind of inspired by my Jamaican American heritage. And so the motto Jamaica is out of many, one people. Initially, I just had one hand on my website, and so I wanted to show more than that, to kind of show that for me, Tubby's Taste is about bringing people together.
Yeah, that's so cool. So yeah, and we're photographing your hands reaching for the cookies too, which I think is extra special. And I think it's really important for working with brands and creating images, especially for the web, get those individual product shots, like for sure, like a cookie on white, you definitely need that. But having those other images that you could put as the header of, your Facebook page or, these sort of things, adds a lot of versatility and I think a lot of use, for you, for the client side.
Yeah, I'm excited to use them.
Well, I think it's time for third cookie. Can you tell me about these ones?
Yeah, so these are called the Island Spice Cookies. They're ginger and molasses. So there's nutmeg in there, cinnamon, of course, ginger and molasses. And I like to say it's kind of like the holidays or fall in a cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I close my eyes and it's Christmas time.
So there's a lot of like nutmeg used in Jamaican like cooking and baking, and so I wanted to make sure that I had a cookie that involved that in it.
Sounds really good.
And it's a really good seasonal cookie.
I love the spice in it. Like, the spice is real, but the like sweetness, the balance is perfect.
Great.
Oh, I love it. So, where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they get some of your delicious cookies?
Online at tubbystaste.com. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Tubby's Taste. And also, if you're in Chicago, we do catering, we're at markets. Just follow us on social media, join our email list, and you'll be able to find out where we're at.
That's fantastic. And of course, we're going to link to Tubby's Taste and Danielle lower on this tutorial page. And in all of our social media, I know I've been Instagram storying like a mad person and tagging you in everything. So, Danielle, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Can we cheers with a cookie one more
Sure.
time?
I'm gonna pick my favorite right now.
Yeah, I you know what? That's my favorite too. I'm gonna have one more bite of this.
Okay.
Ding!
Cheers.
Cheers.
This is a good cookie.
That's a good cookie. Ding, ding, ding. It's time for your baking tip because you're an experienced baker. So what's a good baking tip for me and for anyone else out there watching?
So, Aaron, even though I'm an experienced baker, we all make mistakes. We're all human. And so if I'm baking a cake and for some reason the middle falls, but the rest is pretty usable, what I like to do is turn it into a trifle. A lot of people are unsure of what a trifle is, but it's basically a layered dessert. And it's the best thing you could do with an oopsie. So whether they're cookies that don't come out quite right, or it's a cake that maybe the outside's baked but the inside isn't, you can definitely salvage that product. So for me, with a cake or with cookies, I'll chop up the cake, break up the cookies, and you can layer it into like a nice glass bowl with like whipped cream. For me, I use coconut milk whipped cream.
Yes.
So the perfect trifle for me is cake chunks, whipped cream, and then maybe some fresh fruit.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And people are easily impressed with these mistakes that you made into miracles. So.
Yeah, it sounds like you should mess up cakes more often so you
Yeah.
can make more trifles. I love it. So, I mean, baking is hard. It's like a science, right? So obviously, doesn't turn out perfect every time.
Yeah.
So salvage those mistakes. I love it. I want to dip it in my milk.
And this cookie, like, never fails me.
Just-
Why don't I talk to my products like this?
Hey there, welcome back. It's time to finish up our image. It's super cool. We're gonna be doing some dodging and burning, filling in some shadows in our image, as well as applying a sharpening and really just making this image come to life. So let's go ahead and get back into Photoshop here. I just wanna get a little bit organized. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and group these layers. We'll just call this shaping. There we go. So boop, we can see we add some shaping. Now, we're going to start off with just filling in these shadows a little bit. I don't like super feel like I'm missing out on a ton of information there, but it is just a little bit dark. So we're going to grab a curves adjustment layer. Now, this is what we did to actually counteract some of these shadows on set with our gold reflector. But It did a little bit of a color cast. The silver reflector was a little bit too blue. Maybe the white reflector would have been actually what we wanted here, but not a big deal because we can actually fill in some shadows in Photoshop as well. So what we're gonna do is grab our curves adjustment layer. We're gonna click and drag this, just bring it up a little bit. There we go. And now what I wanna do is make sure that this layer is only visible in the darker areas. I don't want this to be visible in the light areas at all. So we're gonna double click right here on the layer, which brings up our layer style. Here in the bottom of our layer style, it says blend if, and then underlying layer. So now what I can do is make this curves adjustment invisible in the lighter areas. So to do that, simply hold Alt or Option and click and drag from the right to the left. Boom, there we go. So you can see from the right to the left, and it makes this invisible in the lighter areas. I'm gonna go from here a little bit more and just visible in those darks. All right, that looks pretty good. So hit OK there. Now you can just turn this off and on and see what we get. Okay, so it just takes our darks and makes them a little bit brighter. Okay, but it leaves my highlights alone, which I like. I don't want this to be visible everywhere because it flattens them out, looks totally weird. So we're gonna click on our layer mask, hit Control-Command-I to invert that, okay? And now we're gonna paint with our brush tool at like 20% flow and just paint in a little bit of light in here, okay? Nothing crazy, just a little bit of light. There we go, kind of in these little cracks, stacks between the two cookies. All right, that's about it, right? Like we don't need to go crazy with this. And I don't even think it needs to get that bright. So we'll just kind of bring that back down to there. Now I can see a little bit more detail in there. So just for filling in shadows, it's a super simple, easy technique. You can do this on any one of your images. It doesn't have to be cookies. Nice way to just fill in some shadows a little bit. Okay, so now that we have this, it's time to dodge and burn a little bit. So with dodging and burning, I want to kind of enhance the highlights and shadows a little bit. And I also want to take the brightness of this top section down a little bit. So we're going to start off with a little bit of burning, making things darker. So we're going to take our curves adjustment and bring this down a little bit. Okay. Let's invert our layer mask by hitting Control or Command I. And then I'm just going to start painting just a tiny bit up here. Okay. Nothing crazy. I don't want to like super dark in that area, but I want to bring it just a little bit darker there so I have a little bit more information. All right, let's go ahead and zoom out. Okay, because it was just a little bit on the light side. All right, that looks really nice. Now we're going to go ahead and grab a curves adjustment layer. Again, we're going to go darker, and I'm going to invert my layer mask. And I want to kind of enhance these little cracks and shapes in here. So this is, again, it's totally up to you as far as how you want to actually treat your dodging and burning. But I like all these little, cracks. To me, that's what makes it, it gives it like the homemade appearance, So all these little cracks in here, I know we generally brightened up these areas, but I'm still going to go in here and, kind of exaggerate these little pockets of cracks. I don't know. That's why I chose these cookies to feature and retouch, honestly, because I just thought that they had so much character because of all these like cracks that ran through them. There we go. So I'm just taking these areas and just making them a little bit darker. We still can see information. I don't want to make them so dark where it's, where we lose information. There we go. So nice simple edit here. Nothing crazy. All right, maybe bring this a little bit more in there. Cool. So you can see just kind of like making these areas a little bit darker, making those cracks a little bit more pronounced. Fantastic. Now, the next thing I want to do is brighten up some areas. So we're going to grab another curves adjustment layer. Okay. This time we make it a little bit brighter and invert our layer mask. Okay. Now here what I want to do, let's just create a new layer, and I'm just going to go with my little brush tool and kind of show you what I want to highlight. So like this area I want to highlight, this area here, along with like the natural highlights of my of the cookies. There we go. And what this is going to do is it's going to give it more three-dimensionality. Okay, there we go. This area. It's going to make it look like, you know, it goes in more for the cracks and then it comes out for the highlights. So, you know, when you do dodging and burning, making areas darker is burning. So it makes it look like it's going in more, and then dodging, which is lightning, makes it look like it comes out more. So you're making things look more three-dimensional. I like that. Pop it out towards the camera. So good. There we go. And that's the main areas I want to focus on with our dodging. So just want to kind of highlight that for you. All right, we're just going to delete that layer. Now we just grab a curves adjustment layer and make this brighter. I want to skip, obviously, all these little cracks because I just made those darker, right? So I don't want to, you know, have to undo what I did before. There we go. And I'm just using a low flow for this, like a flow of 20%, so I can just kind of go over an area a couple of times and have it just, that effect build up. And the deal with using a low flow is just paint it on, paint, and you just stop when it looks good. Easy, right? There's no, not much, it's not hard. There we go. Cool. So let's zoom out a little bit here and just turn all that off and on. So there's the before and the after. You can see the cookies just look a little bit more three-dimensional, and the lighting looks more even on them too. Let's group all those so I can just do a very quick before and after. So here's our before and the after. You can see the highlights and shadows are a little bit more even, especially like here. There we go. I'm going to tone those down just a tiny bit. So this area, let's just make it not as bright. Boop. And then this area, let's make it not as dark. It's nice because you can kind of go in here and choose. All right. Call that dodge burn. So there's the before and the after. Nice. See how it looks like more three-dimensional in the after? Nice and simple. Almost done here. Last thing we want to do is a little bit of sharpening. So super easy because we've got Photoshop actions included with this tutorial. So we're just going to go to Window and down to Actions. Okay. And then now, if you haven't loaded your Learn Sharpen Actions, it's included in a bunch of our tutorials because I love it. So we're going to go to our little menu item, go down to Load Actions, and we're going to make sure we're in our download folder, Photoshop Actions, and then learnsharpen.atn. Now let's go ahead and open that up. Now you can see we've got a few different sharpening actions. We're going to start with, basically, if you're doing really small details, you'll use a smaller number. The larger your details, the larger your number. So let's go with a +4. You can change this at any time. So don't worry about, it's not destructive or anything. If you hit the wrong number up here, you can change it. So, no stress. All good. So we did a +4, and actually that did a pretty nice sharpen on there. Now, one thing that I like about these sharpen actions is I can double click right here where it says high pass. There we go. And I can actually choose more sharpening or less sharpening while I'm here. Okay. So really easy way for me to just see what works for my image, because it can be a little bit tough to guess. All right. Fantastic. And in this case, I think a little bit less sharpening actually works well. So let's hit OK there. All right, there we go. And let's go ahead and zoom in. Let's take a look at our cookie here. So there we go. There's the before and the after with that. So you can see it just kind of takes that texture and brings it out a little bit, adding some sharpness to the cookies. All right. Well, that's fantastic, man. These cookies look absolutely delish. I'd love to have a little bite on them. Maybe Danielle will let me. Well, there we go. So we did quite a bit with these images. We focus stacked. We made sure we learned how to create a pure white background. We even did some shaping, dodging and burning, and finished this up with sharpening. So I think we've got some fantastic pictures. I'm super excited about delivering them to our client. I hope you learned a ton and had a great time. If you haven't already done so, please leave a review of this tutorial here on Flurn. We are doing our best to create the best community of photographers and retouchers and post-production and creative artists around the world. So your reviews really help to grow that community. Thanks again. I'll Flurn you later. Bye, everyone. Hey, Mr. Tallyman, tally me bananas. Daylight come and me wanna go home.